can't stop me, I'm a legend. I run with the crew that's making the moves. Get out of the way, we coming through. We got this, never stopping, and we won't lose. No, we can't lose. Yeah.
Round 8 of the RaceKraft V8 Veterans Championship in Season 20, and it's a big one. 300 kilometers of Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps for the Eau Rouge, or is it Raidillon 300? You're watching SimSpeed TV coverage of Split 1, David Haynes with Daniel Yeaman. Well, it's an awesome track and a championship that's been so competitive across the last couple of weeks, and always plenty to talk about with regards to strategy, with regards to wheel-to-wheel racing, and the challenge that the circuit provides. And this is a circuit that will provide a lot of challenge. 7 kilometers of tarmac up and down the hills through the forest for the drivers to all negotiate.
That sure does, David. Thank you for being here once again tonight. Unfortunately, missing our normal team of Scott Rankin and Thomas Hinz, but all being well, we'll have them back for next Thursday's race, as much as you've, David, actually been really enjoying being with the series. But here we are zooming down on Spa, and yeah, as you said, great history here at this circuit. You actually mentioned a bit of it on Monday as well.
Yeah, I did. As we zoom in, you can actually see where they've created bypasses for the highway around the circuit. The back straight, the Camel Straight, fastest part of the racetrack, used to be public road all the way from La Source up towards Lacombe there. Almost the whole thing used to be public road, especially back in the 1920s, 1930s when Grand Prix racing first came to this part of Belgium. The current layout is since 2007, and the part of the lap from turn 5 and around to turn 15 there, sometime in the 70s or 80s, I do believe, it kept some of the fearsome nature of Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, still kept it as a very long Grand Prix lap, over 7 kilometers there, meaning that the lap times are well over 2 minutes in cars like these. But it made it a really good permanent racing facility. Key overtaking opportunities, there's a few of them around a big lap like this, like La Source, turn 1, Lacombe, of course, at the end of the Camel Straight. You got to be careful to get a good run up the hill, though, through Raidillon, and mind your track limits there if you are going to get a good run to try to attack in that part of the lap and into the bus stop chicane. Big braking zone there, also a great chance at overtaking. And for this style of race car, a few corners that are super difficult, just on the edge, not flat out really through places like Blanchimont in a car like this, who on a massive challenge as well as the Lafania chicane, high speed change of direction there. A lot of corners where you're really leaning on the tyres, putting heat through them on the edge of grip around here, can be a relatively high tyre wear circuit.
Yeah, well, speaking of tyre wear, I'll actually get out some stats from the drivers. So once again, bringing back our driver ratings. Little graphic here based on getting a form out to the drivers for this round. And actually, despite the fact that there's definitely a good, high potential for tyre wear around this place, David, according to the drivers, just a little bit above sort of middle of the road around this place. In fact, most of our numbers here tonight on this graphic sort of just around middle of the road here, with race strategy variety being the only one that really sticks out there at a 4.0 out of 5.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, of course, there's less opportunities to pit on a longer lap. Well, with 300 kilometers, it's only just over 40 laps of racing, but it covers a long, long distance. So I guess if someone goes to undercut you, it's a long time before you can react to it. The chance of successfully pulling off an undercut is perhaps higher here than it might be at some shorter racetracks where you have a sooner right of reply to a strategy call from your rival. Chance of safety car 3.8, it's true, when there is a crash around here, it's normally a big crash. You think about Radion, you think about through Blanchimont, other places like that, where even when the walls aren't right next to you, you will approach them at big speed if you have a mistake or a slide or a spin.
Yeah, that is going to be what to watch out for. Last time out, Imola, 250k race, no safety cars whatsoever. So whether we get another situation like that where it is going to come down to strategy in a green flag situation, or if the yellow flags coming out might just mix things up for the drivers. And as you mentioned, as we got underway here tonight, 300 kilometers coming our way. Basically, we're one lap short of the actual Belgian Formula 1 Grand Prix distance, even though we did tick over the 300k mark with 43 laps. As a result, with a long track, lots of high-speed throttle section 2, that fuel burn as well is going to be one to keep an eye out for, David.
Yeah, big lap, over 5 litres per lap as the typical fuel burn. So one lap to the next could be quite a different race car. That is a challenge for all the drivers. And ahead of the 300 kilometres, they're qualifying now. And we will have some things with regards to where we stand in the championship after the events of last round as well. So this is the strategy potential here. You see in yellow, if you save as much fuel as you can, pit as late as you can, then you might be able to go as far as lap 16 or so there, versus lap 2, the compulsory pit stop window opens, so pit stops after lap 2 could count there. And if you stopped early and had a long middle stint and then a long final stint, it'd look like that red line, in contrast to the running long fuel saving yellow line, and therefore the teal line is somewhere in between what we normally expect to be an optimal strategy, balancing the weight of fuel in the car, the stint length, and the undercut performance potential. So somewhere in the middle is normally the sweet spot, but there are some pretty wide extremes of strategy possible across 300 kilometers and 2 compulsory stops.
Yeah, without a doubt in mind. Obviously, the big thing being our longest race and a high fuel burn track. We are going to see long pit stops here tonight in both occasions. The fact that we're talking about on the long stop about 40 seconds, on the short stop you're still talking around 18 to 20 seconds here tonight. So you owe a whole bunch of time in the pit lane to get the necessary fuel in the car. If you can save fuel consistently over the course of a stint, that will be one to watch out for as well. 22 laps and a full tank of fuel, that doesn't sound too impossible, I have to say, based on the fuel numbers I was able to gather earlier today, David. But going 23, that'll be the real tough one, I think, if anyone tries to go for that kind of strategy.
Yeah, nearly 40 drivers, so if you're somewhere in the middle of the pack, the chance to slipstream and save fuel could be pretty significant, but it won't be there for your race leader and wherever it may be that they end up after this qualifying. Again, that many cars, even a long, long race with the chance for strategy, a little bit of clean air, a little bit of track position could be really, really vital. We've seen a few drivers be able to make some big moves, either up or down through the field, something we kept an eye on last round as well at Imola. So we remain to be seen on that one. It was the track limits at Imola in qualifying that was a little bit of a challenge. Could be the same again here at Spa. This is championship standings after that round 7 race. Scott Gamble leading the way from Michael Whiting and Blake Delaney as your top 3. Good results for a couple of drivers have moved them up through the field. So David Kirby goes to 4th, Christian Smart to 5th, and then there's Jeff Thomas, Damien Cairns, Mark Poynton, Chris Miller and Ken Latta dropping somewhat in the standings with drop rounds provisionally counted. So it's always a little fuzzy till we get a little deeper in the championship, factoring in some of those drop rounds. The biggest mover, Mike Teljancic and John Latham. Biggest shaker, Brenton Nitschke. But again, the way that you count some of the drop rounds, etc., there's still plenty of chance that some drivers bag some strong results, some podiums maybe even in the back part of the season, and really still rocket up that championship order.
Yeah, that is very true indeed. We are only one more round coming before drop rounds are locked in. So basically tonight's race here at Spa and next week's race at Road Atlanta, the two final chances to drop a round if you have a bad one or if you're not actually able to be present. But beyond that, that's all locked in, and then we can talk about the standings proper once we get to our final race of the season. Well, qualifying has just wrapped up, but one thing to reflect on before we do so, David, is our Chubby Buns Burgers Driver of the Day award. And well, last time out, it wasn't actually for a driver necessarily who was absolutely taking the standings by storm, but it was a driver who, for the first time in quite some time in the series, put it up near the front of the field in qualifying and stayed up the front during the course of that 250k race. It was, of course, Tim Nicol for Quantum Peckies Racing in the number 23 machine. Coming home last time out, I believe it was fourth place, pardon me. I actually grabbed that result back. Started fourth, finished fifth, David. But yeah, the first time I can see that he finished in the top five since all the way back in the 15th season of the series at Indianapolis. Pardon me if there's a missing result there, Tim. And you got one similar in some gaps there.
So no doubt a really great showing for Tim Nicol, who becomes Chubby Buns Burgers Driver of the Day from last round. See what kind of performance they can bring here at this round and who might be in contention for that award this time out. Congrats go to Tim, though.
Without a doubt. Well, as I said, qualifying is now complete. We can start looking at the grid order for this race here tonight, and we throw it up on screen. And once again, no major surprises. That pole position will be in the hands of Scott Gamble, the defending series champion for 9.5 SimSports. Sharing the front row, though, Chris Miller, one of his better qualifying results of this season, to be alongside him there. Actually usurping teammate Ken Latta there, who will have to settle for a third place start. And have to say, it looks like Tim's on a bit of a run here. That's two fourth place starts in a row to get things underway here shortly tonight. With Dan Hall, though, out of P5 in behind him, first of our Evolution Racing Team drivers in Split 1 tonight, and Greg Sharp, the first of the WK&P SimSports machines there alongside him in P6. Times are looking nice and tight here when you're looking row to row, although there are some gaps that open up between the rows. Nevertheless, row 4 going to be Travis Hunt there in the JWM SimSports Mustang, with Chad Lewis, the next of the ERT cars, to his outside in 8th place. In your top 10, rounded out by Jeff Thomas, the second of the JWM SimSport Mustangs, and Michael Stewart, strong qualifying for him here in that Hypersonic Racing 919.
Yeah, that's our top 10, and for a big lap with a pole time of 2 minutes 18, the times are still pretty close together, with Damian Cairns and Stephen Kennedy in the 11th and 12th on the grid. And then we have David Nash and Mark Poynton for the standing start coming up. 15th and 16th is Robbie Griffiths and Darren Crosby. And behind them, Scott McCune and Stuart Hall's the first driver, more than a second away from the pole position, all the way back there in 18th position. That's a good showing again from one of the biggest laps that you'll find anywhere in permanent circuit racing. David Kirby and Robert Crisdale are the 19th and 20th on the grid.
That they are, and looking now just beyond them in 21st place, it's going to be Blake Delaney, only a couple of hundredths back. In fact, it's 7/1000ths of a second to Robert Crisdale ahead of him there, so outside as a result. Dean Favol will be joining him on that 11th row there in the 880 machine, and in behind them, it'll be Michael Whiting lining up behind his teammate Delaney, 23rd, sharing that 12th row with another one of the Fishy Motorsports cars in Christian Smart there, the 999 machine, with P25 in behind, going to go to Shane Randell for the Simrigs Infinity Motorsports 501, and the Old Mate and Sons number 9 of Gary Buckland sharing row 13 to the outside there for him. Behind them will be Stephen Varga in the second of the Quantum Pickies Racing Machines, back in 27th, though, unfortunately for him, sharing this 14th row with Jamie McKnight, next of our Fishy Motorsport machines, who are all bunched up here near the midfield / back of the field. At this stage, it seems the top 30 going to be rated out by Brad Doble in the 302 and Paul Burns for SimTech Performance in the 110, David.
Last bracket of drivers on the grids, Chris Blanchard and Scotty Van Loon. And then the 3 remaining drivers who set qualifying times are Darren Goosey, Craig Friend, so old mate and sons teammates there on that row of the grid. The last driver with the qualifying time was Halil Cesar, who's going to start out of 35th. Behind is drivers who didn't set a qualifying time. Jason Fewens, one of them, will start out of 36th if indeed he starts. And then John Latham and Mario Reale are the only other 2 drivers I think that we will get. So 38 cars, of which 35 have qualifying times. Fewens, Latham and Reale with a chance to make up some positions across 300 kilometres, but not off to an ideal start course. It's just 2 laps in the qualifying. Track limits can be tough at Spa. Through the corners we mentioned, Radion, Blanchimont, etc. This is a look tonight on Zoom, who we've got, and of course in the top left there, Christopher Blanchard. You look across, we've got the pole sitter, Scott Gamble. In the middle, Jason Fewens is wondering where it all went wrong in his qualifying. Give us a wave, buddy. And then always one of the favourites, Dino's Dyno, lets us know how he's going. Dean Flavel there at 18. Oh no, his heart stopped, it's back. 90 beats per minute, somewhere in the middle zone, and only up to 480 calories burned yet after 300 kilometers. I imagine it'll be a lot more, and a few of the other drivers, no doubt, we'll check in with across the race. Great to have an insight into the sim rigs everyone's on. Oh, keep your shirt on, Kirby. Okay, there's 2 shirts, good. But a lot of triple monitor setups there, a couple in VR, lots of great kit going on from our drivers, as 38 of them are ready to go racing at Spa.
Yep, well, they've got plenty of time to jump on the grid here, and it is just now a matter of waiting for the pre-race preparations to all wind up. And yeah, a reminder of how things are going to go here tonight. They have 43 laps ahead of them here in this event. They start on 80 litres of fuel thanks to a fixed setup from Jamie McKnight. They do have all 111 litres of the fuel tank available to them as available. As a result, we're looking at around 140 to 150 litres of fuel needed to add to the car to make it home tonight, and they have 2 compulsory pit stops in which to do it, and they have access to that anytime from the end of lap number 2. Although there is an asterisk there, David, because if we get a safety car on lap 1, we haven't seen it yet in this season, I do believe, that will delay the safety car window from opening.
And of course, when we talk about compulsory pit stops, pit stop windows, etc., at Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, got to talk about the fact that we're using the Grand Prix pit lane here. So the pit lane speed limit is 80 k's an hour, and they don't also have to trundle through the endurance pits. The pit stop delta, therefore, is a little lower than it could be on some of the other configurations, other pit lanes here at Circuit Spa-Francorchamps. No, it's just Grand Prix pit lane speed and the Grand Prix pits. So altogether, not too bad if you do end up with a drive-through or needing to make an extra stop like Jason Fewens did last time out. Scott Gamble and Chris Miller once again in the front row of the grid getting ready to go. Ken Latter was a driver who struggled to get away from the standing start earlier, having qualified on the second row, and it really set his race backwards. So you're starting with a lot of fuel on board, and your start, your bite point, your revs, you don't want to get swamped on the way down to turn 1, but you also don't want to give too many revs, drop the clutch too aggressively, and spin up your rear tyres. Soon, they're all about to find out. It's a beautiful day. It's a cool day. 18 in the air, 20 on the track, but the engines and V8 Vets are about to get hot with 300 kilometres of Circuit Spa-Francorchamps underway. Clean getaway from almost all, particularly up front. Not a whole lot of wheel spin, not too much smoke in the air. Heading towards the La Source hairpin for the first lap. It's perfect for the pole sitter, Scott Gamble. For the rest of them, it's a car park, 2 wide, 3 wide, 4 wide, and we do have a spin and some contact. Stephen Kennedy is around and has been cleared up, and there's 3 drivers parked out in the outfield. The racing will continue green, and those drivers will get going, but definitely some contact and some drivers getting spun around there.
Yeah, Stephen Kennedy, Rob Christdale, David Nash, the 3 cars stricken there. As back at the front of the field, Chris Miller already looking for the inside as we make the run towards Lecombe, but Gamble on the brakes a tiny bit later will be able to cover that one off there into the chicane at the end of the Kemmel Straight for the first time. Single file snake here in the top 10 or so, it seems, as they work their way out of Malmedy and down towards, well, is it Rivage, is it Bruxelles? Depends on how you want to call it here, David, as we get towards the end of the opening half of this first lap.
Rivage forever in my head, but apparently it's Brussels officially now. So Gamble leading the way, Chris Miller behind him, Ken Latta behind. Again, everyone was very equal up front. The top 7 still running in the qualifying order. You've got to look to Chad Lewis, who lost a couple of spots off that start before there's any change inside of the top 10. Some big getaways from David Kirby +6, Blake Delaney +7. Jamie McKnight is +9 so far on this lap. So he had an awesome start, and he might have been able to just drive through the smoke on some of that other contact, and he would have picked up a couple of spots if he was in the right place at the right time, as others were spinning around and having to check up.
Yeah, I'll either try and get a replay there of the drivers in that La Source incident, and yeah, maybe see if we can pick up some of the drivers, as you said, that have been able to make good moves on this opening lap. The field, though, here at the front, already out past Curva. Paul Frere on the run to Blanchimont. Let's ride on board here, focusing on Mark Poynton for a moment in the number 29 Frog Abuse Racing entry. As you said, Dave, let's listen for it. Again, brakes. That's how much we're backing off here for what's typically a high-speed left-hander. Well, it still is, but usually flat out.
Well, for an LMP2 car, for an F1 car with a bit of downforce on, you're pretty well flat out through there. For a GT3 car, maybe you just got to breathe the throttle a little bit, but not these things. You've got a lot of power. You arrive at a lot of speed. You want to make sure you make that corner. It's a challenging one. The first lap completed. The Source seeing some battling going on. Travis Hunt's lost a couple of spots off of this lap so far. We had 36 of 38 drivers take the race start as well. So Jason Fewens, some technical problems. He missed the start. Scott McCune also not taking to the grid. So of the 38 drivers, 36 started. I think Fewens may have joined the lap down again. A big lap. He's a long way behind the leaders. Up through Radion, here is Fewens, and he's a lap down to all of these cars. You see him alongside. It's not poor position for him, unfortunately, in that one.
Oh, you're not going to believe this. Well, Scott Rankin, if he's watching, he's not going to believe this. I'm going to put this Zoom feed in here tonight. That there live footage from over the shoulder of Scott McCune, the number 77 Hypersonic Racing guys. You can see I can actually select him in server. No, I can't. He doesn't exist, unfortunately, there. So looks like Technical Gremlins striking the 77 machine away from this field to get started here. So that's a real shame there. And I didn't do it. I've just unfortunately brought your attention to it, Scott, if you're watching.
Yeah, the red bar on his iRacing there across the top, suggesting that he's having a problem loading in to the server, not able to join. It's not loading correctly for him. So sometimes you've got to do a complete iRacing, reinstall there, delete some stuff, download it again, reinstall if it gets corrupted. And yeah, there are ways around those problems, but he's had one of them tonight. Presumably put Scott McEwen out of this race. At the end of this lap, compulsory pit stop window will open, not expecting anyone to want to jump too early. They started with similar amount of fuel to what they did in the 250 kilometer races, but this is a 300k race. You are probably going to want to go quite a bit deeper into this first stint, even if you're one of the drivers quite a bit back in the pack. You are going to get a little bit of an undercut for a whole lot of pain later in this very, very long race. They're starting to hit their speed now. We get the first proper flying laps, and of course for the race leader, Scott Gamble, 218.6 goes to the board as his fastest lap. And you can see which drivers don't trigger a personal best lap. It means they've been off track this lap, and it means Michael Stewart, Travis Hunt, Blake Delaney, Stuart Hall, Dean Flavel, Stephen Varga. I could keep reading them out. Track limits are a tough thing here at Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, particularly up the top here in a big heavy car. Through Eau Rouge, Radion, you got to keep it within the white lines. Bit of biff and barge going on around these spots here as well, heading onto the Kemmel Straight in front of Jamie McKnight, who's still a big mover in this race. It's drivers like Crosby and Whiting who are side by side to the braking zone at Lacombe. Down the inside goes Whiting, ahead of Crosby. Whiting is up +8 spots. Poynton and Stuart Hall side by side through the sequence of corners that continues on. The inside becomes the outside. You can fight it side by side. A lot of corners in a row here, but eventually I think the inside's where you want to be at Rivage, and that's where Stuart Hall finds himself.
Oh, can Poynton perhaps hang it round the outside, though? And he takes the inside? Yes, he can. For, well, Jackie X, no name. Take your pick, whatever you want it to call it there. And on the run to Poon, it's going to open up the opportunity for Jamie McKnight now to have an eye on the inside there. Oop, pardon me, that's the wrong battle pack there, per se. As down through this double left-hander, as it's called, the double gauche, otherwise known at that part of the circuit. But Stewie Hall hangs on for now, although with the 027 to his outside, we'll see what happens here through the Lafanya chicane, David.
Absolutely, so much great side-by-side racing happening here between Stuart Hall and Jamie McKnight and some others now. It's letting the like of Whiting and Crosby get away. You see how much time they've lost. A second and a half, almost two, with this side-by-side battling that they've had. We've got exciting middle sequence of corners around Circuit Spa-Francorchamps. Sector 1, the first sector, and the final sector, both defined by their very long straights, but in the middle, there's a lot of medium-speed corners. Cars with a lot of downforce react well to those. This is not one of those cars. So the side-by-side racing, exciting, but costing them a little bit of time early on in this one. How about the braking performance there into the bus stop chicane? Jamie McKnight's on a mission to try to be +10 spots in just 3 laps.
Well, he needs to get this one here off of the 49 of Hall. Inside here for Lassalle should be his. And then he's got to go after the number 29 of Mark Point, who's been basically set free by this battle pack that has been going on. Is in the background there. Van Loon's going backwards in the 410. Where is Scott? There he is. As he calls into race control, David. So that might be one of the replays we need to go and have a look at too in a second.
And then there's a little bit more contact through Eau Rouge between these going side by side. I think Van Loon might have got a little bit of contact in the concertina into the braking zone. Atlas Source turn one, big accident on the Camel Straight. Cars piling into the Armco. Track halfway blocked. It's like WEC all over again. Drivers are piling in at speed, and there's many damaged cars. Debris everywhere in the Camel Straight, and a bunch of cars that I think are going nowhere. Is this a chance to bring out a safety car? Somehow Gary Buckland thinks he can keep that going, but for Paul Burns, I don't think he's going anywhere in a hurry. And look, how many bumpers do you want?
Oh, Buckland's having a hard time getting that thing pointing the right way as it is. The call has been made, so let's see, where are our leaders? They're coming all the way down into the Lafanya chicane. Little lock from Gamble. That's not ideal for the tyres, and this probably means we are on the verge, and indeed safety car boards and flags are out. And this will just completely upend the strategy I think some of these drivers would have had in mind, David.
Big accident, lot of damaged cars, and one car going nowhere on the Camel Straight brings out a safety car on lap 4, which makes the strategy so interesting. Is this an opportunity that your leaders are going to want to take to pit? Definitely those at the tail end of the field will see this as an opportunity to top up their tanks and put new tyres on. The speed that Gamble, Miller and Ken Latter are doing around the circuit to get towards pit entry suggests they think it might be the way to go for them as well. Into the bus stop chicane, pit entry on the right. Your leader, Scott Gamble, is coming in, but who's following him? Most of them. Who's not following him is the big question. Someone stayed out in a green Falcon, didn't they? Almost everyone else coming in though.
Let's have a look. No, not Michael Stewart, who's the first of the hypersonic machines. In fact, so far, looking at these angles I've got here for you, David, I'm seeing a Snake going from first to, well, now into the mid-20s. So I think we are about to see everyone dive in, top the tank up. Oh, that's a car going backwards in the lane. That's not going to help them get out on time.
Everyone in pit lane together, and there's a handful of shared pit stalls. It's so congested in the lane. You've seen a number of drivers overshoot their pit stalls, need to get into reverse gear, and that's going to not help them win the race off of pit lane. So absolutely everybody in pit lane. It's the Vanessa Amorossi style. Except for Jason Fewens. You know what? I think he gets his lap back here. I think Jason Fewens ends up back on the lead lap from this, because he's gotten around Scott Gamble, and it could bring Jason Fewens back in to this race, and he might still also have the opportunity to pit with everyone else that are getting back on strategy as well. There's the safety car waiting on the Camel Straight to pick up the leading Scott Gamble and waving Jason Fewens around.
Yeah, that is perfect for Fewens after whatever issues might have delayed him from getting out on track. Whilst it means he'll, he can power around here, he'll be able to get full service on, and that'll mean he'll still be on strategy with everyone else as well to boot, since he'll have burned the same amount of fuel.
Well, he's a very, very lucky boy tonight, I would say. From technical problems that saw him dropping in and out of the server a couple of times to a whole lap down to the majority of the field, just somehow suddenly back in this one. He still looks a little sweaty and nervous. I'm sure it's not been the race preparation that you'd otherwise want, but he could be back in this one. I'm not seeing much variation at all to fuel strategy. I think everyone has taken the new tyres and topped off the fuel tank. It's 22 seconds, 23 seconds, 24 seconds for everyone. So it's not the normal strategy we would have otherwise seen, where some drivers take a big gulp of fuel at the first pit stop, some try to get some track position, go a little bit lighter at the first stop, and then really top it off at the second stop. No, it looks like everyone is sort of a reset, is back to full tanks.
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense in my mind, strategically speaking, at this point in the race. There's no point trying to gain track position in a safety car stop when it means you're not going to get a chance to really utilise the benefits of it there. So indeed, Jason Fewens conducted the pit lane now. And yeah, look at that, with the leaders barely out of poo on, he'll have plenty of time to brim that tank up as well. And then he can probably also take his sweet time cruising around to catch up. So he should hopefully burn a fraction less fuel on his outlap here as well. And in the pits, I'm seeing a big stretch from Jason Fewens on the Zoom cam feed. So he literally put his arms up and relax.
Yeah, so safety car doing about 80 k's an hour, full pace around here. The average speed could easily be 160, so you should be able to catch the safety car train pretty quickly. Can we get a run through a couple of the zoom cameras again, see how everyone's doing behind the safety car at the moment? Surely an opportunity to take a few big deep breaths for Dino's dyno as well.
You know, let's go the full wall for a second here while we're on the safety car. So this is what everyone
so we're in
looks
the
like.
pit window to the wall. Sorry, no. 95 up there for Dino's dyno. Take a few big deep breaths and it could come down, but he's not fully on the limiter. Jason Fewens, of course, in the top left corner. For Blanchard. Scott Gamble, well, he's cruising, one hand on the wheel, doing 80 k's an hour. The other hand probably, hanging out the window. We've all seen someone drive like that. Damien Cairns trying to maximize his fuel saving, I think, at this point as well. Because if you want to do a bit of fuel saving in green flag conditions, you're going to want to do a bit of fuel saving behind the safety car if you can as well. It's Chad Lewis. Stewart in VR. Travis Hunt is in the 10th position, having lost 3 spots off of that race start. You see him centre right there also, just having a look. It's probably the Twitch chat for him, isn't it?
Fair bet, yes. For Travis, it's a YouTube channel to be precise, so technically speaking, probably his YouTube chat.
Right. Chat. Hi, chat.
Chat indeed. And Greg Sharp, apparently on my end, we don't have a camera feed from him at this stage, but he's here with us in spirit, perhaps, is how we're going to go with that one there. And yeah, so that's our 11 drivers who have a Zoom feed. And it looks like no sign of Scott McCune's connection being restored. So I think, unfortunately, he might have pulled the pin completely, David, on this race. But with that all said, it's time to go back to lap 1 and some replays from the source, I think, to kick things off.
So somewhere in the middle of the pack, like I said, it was sort of 3 wide, 4 wide. Someone's just made contact and looped someone else around here. Right, so it starts there. And it spins a couple around. Everyone else, there's plenty of wide open racetrack for the cars to go through. So that didn't cause a safety car. But from Mark Poynton's perspective, he's sandwiched in the middle here. Yeah.
And then Robert Crisdale, I think, is the poor soul who arrives on the scene third and ends up in no man's land, basically So yeah, out on the outside of La Source. That angle there doesn't help. I probably should go on board with him. And slams into a broadside David Nash, who unfortunately ended up there in that accident. So that explains that one there. And then, just as we were on board with it in real time, we had this big one at the top of Eau Rouge and Radion. Then there's the tag for Paul Burns. I actually need to go back again. Find a different camera angle in that moment.
So you've got some different lines, different speed heading up the straight. Burns is a little bit on the back foot. He gets boxed in with, it's one into the other. Causes a big pile up. Got a few other drivers that come through at massive speed here as well and keep piling into it as well. But Paul Burns is the one who took the most engine damage. The flashing yellow light suggests he's stalled. And so Friend is trying to pin tight, and he gets hit from behind, then he hits Burns. Yeah,
I just want to go one last time because note here for Craig Friend, old mate and son, 696, up alongside Gary Buckland and the teammates, it was, to be precise, is what I wanted to try and show. They get together and trigger the whole thing, unfortunately. David Nash there.
And then there's one more. It was probably Nash that I saw a live picture. It was a black and blue car that entered the scene black and blue and left the scene somehow blacker and bluer. No, he was full speed and he picked the wrong side.
And that has done a right number on the front end of the 911. How that car even drives back to the pits is a minor miracle. Careful there, Jason. You've got the clean car now. Try and get through without any massive damage. And before I cut away to the replay, that's what happens to David Nash. So isn't able to make it back at all in the first place.
And so
didn't even catch that there. So while all of that was happening there, I think... yes, apologies, folks. I've had an issue with my connection, which means I can't hear Mr. David Haynes, but he'll bounce back into the commentary in a second. So I will just talk for a moment here, and then hopefully keep an eye out for when that restores itself. And yes, you are now back indeed. Unfortunately, it's a me problem, and Discord is yet to get that one solved for me. So annoyingly, still waiting on a fix for that. What it will mean is I'll have to listen out. If you suddenly go silent, I can take over for 30 seconds at a time. But I was just going to say, we're coming to the restart here and now on lap 6, going to lap 7, David. There's also some chatter there on the radio about the incidents we've seen so far. I think I heard the lap 1, turn 1 incident, whilst Netcode has been deemed someone partially at fault, so there'll be post-race points for them. And then same thing, apparently Netcode up at the top of Radion on the Camel as well, but that will be a racing incident in this case.
So the safety car away. Scott Gamble leads us. Ken Latter and Tim Nicol both gained positions on Chris Miller when Miller overshot his pit box. I'm seeing 3 seconds longer in the lane. Time lost from overshooting the pit box and having to engage reverse has cost 2 positions to Chris Miller and elevated Ken Latter and Tim Nicol. Jeff Thomas also a couple of positions gained, as it looks like Dan Hall overshot his pit box, and probably Greg Sharp as well, who's lost a couple of spots from that one. So precision in the pit lane, even under safety car, was very, very important. And Scott Gamble is going, so he's going to get us underway again for the Eau Rouge, or is that Radion actually, 300 of V8 Vets. I covered a number of kilometres, but they've still got a lot more and at least one stop to go. I wonder if there's anyone in a high tyre wear situation who thinks that this turns it into a 3-stop race. Scott Gamble, great restart. He's not challenged on the way into La Source, but there are some battles going on further back for that. And a little bit of contact as well to go with it. They're all on full tanks now, heavier than they've ever been.
Yeah, this is going to be a good test to see who's got a handle on the cars. As into Eau Rouge, look at the loading on the left-hand side of the tyres. At least the tyres at this point, they'll be providing maximum grip at this stage in the session. and that'll mean they can put something now just in behind the footage here. You can see Greg Sharp trying to fend off David Kirby as they make the run down towards Lecombe, but Kirby on the outside there in the 307. I think he's going to have the job here. He's ahead. Under brakes, David, and I think, yep, he'll get the one done there through the middle of Lecombe out to Malmedy.
Yeah, so David Kirby on a bit of a charge now. 8 positions gained in this race. Greg Sharp lost a couple in the pit lane and has lost one more out on track there, but his car is still tidy with a long way to go in this race, and I think that is what's most important. Blake Delaney's made some spots already in this race, though, and he's the next car behind for position on Greg Sharp, as that's wide and understeer from David Kirby. He got ahead, but now he's right back under threat, needing to defend the inside line in Sapuon, locking back Greg Sharp towards Blake Delaney, Robert Griffiths, and then Michael Whiting, another driver to watch to make some spots in this race for sure.
Yeah. And now with that pass having taken a little bit to sort of resolve itself, margin opened up a bit there to Travis Hunt in front of to the tune of about 1.5, if not 1.6 seconds. So Kirby's going to have to watch his back here, and for all these guys behind, any good runs from them might just see them get the draft up along one of these longer straight sections. Though, yeah, I'm so used to seeing around here, even in a GT3 car, Blanchimont being an easy flat-out exercise, and then these guys here tonight, they're having to make sure they ease it in. That's who I want to go with, was Blake Delaney. Let's have a look here at the how he's driving the car, David, because I think I heard a bit of a clutch lift and fuel save into Blanchimont itself there on this occasion.
Yeah, once Blanchimont becomes a braking zone, then it becomes an opportunity to save fuel as well. Coast your way in for 50 metres, 100 metres even, and then just give it a tiny tap on the brake, put the nose down, wait on the nose, make the car turn into the fast corner. Suddenly you can save fuel there, you can save fuel then immediately braking into the bus stop and source. The more places are braking zones, the more opportunity there is to actually just coast into a couple of places, save a little bit of fuel. It's a chance of what Blake Delaney was doing. And then Rouge Radion, let's get an insight into how that one drives. Keeping it in fifth, breathing the throttle a little bit, but not massively, and then shifting into sixth gear just before the Kemmel kink, continuing up the Kemmel straight. Rev limiter at 7,500. What are we going to get to? Just a little short of that, so not bad.
Yeah, well, QC, because at the Imola they were a little short on top end revs, which meant you could hit the limit up pretty early on the approach to turn 2, I guess, technically speaking, at Imola in the draft. Looks like tonight here at Spa, they're going to have the headroom if they get a really good run up Eau Rouge and Radion to use all of the extra overspeed in the draft. Probably maybe a top speed of around 290 or so might be possible in that case. We'll have to see if we get a chance to spot that later on, David.
And I'm seeing 279, 280 from the cars in second and third place. So 280 is possible. That's wide for the double left-hander. Blake Delaney could be next to take a spot away from Greg Sharp, and I think he will. So Sharpie's going to fight it out through Lafanya, through the right-hander, but then by the time it gets around to the left, I think you're in the wrong spot. You're out of touch, you're out of time. Delaney through, and now Robert Griffiths and Whiting are going to be next behind Greg Sharp. You see a couple of car lengths opening up to the next cars further forward as well. Some cars now ahead with a bit more race pace than Greg Sharp's got right now.
Yeah, let's see what these guys here can do. Ollie Griffiths is now the next one. Lining up potentially, and through Blanchimont, can't quite get it held up on the curb, so has to run it out a little wider and sacrifice an off track almost certainly for those troubles there. But can't get past at this stage either. We'll see if he can line something up for Eau Rouge or Radion. Jump back up the order here, David, towards the last position on the podium at the stage, because it's currently a bit of a two-way scrap. Tim Nicol up a spot, having done well in this opening stint. Chris Miller in behind him at this stage, though, wants that spot back.
Yeah, Miller, no shortage of race pace, no shortage of qualifying pace, but overshot the pit box behind the safety car. Everyone was pretty densely packed there, and it cost him 2 spots, I do believe. So Nicol got ahead on precision in the pit lane, not an overtake out on track, and Miller might like it back. His personal best is significantly quicker than Tim Nicol's. It's sustaining it that is going to be the challenge, and being able to make a pass, that's going to be the challenge. Someone's dropping big time down the order. Scotty Van Loon, I think, got a slowdown penalty, cutting Radion. Had to near park it on the Camel Straight. Might have lost 15 positions. That might be an exaggeration. It might have been 10, but it seemed like a lot, a really big penalty to have to serve for cutting the track.
Let's see here. I'm seeing on this lap he was in 27th. So thankfully not as drastic as 10 spots, but still that's a good 6 odd spots on my timing. He's had to drop there all of a sudden. Yeah, definitely going slow enough to flag that moment there as well to boot. So not being a great night for Scotty. I think he barely escaped from the incident that brought out the safety car, but it was pretty close. Although at the same time, might have been damaged in the process for good measure. Just to add some insult to injury, and given the fact that, yeah, he pitted a lap before David Nash did, who had to tow his car back to the pits, and for Gary Buckland in behind him. Also a long pit stop that's still got him out on the lead lap. Impressively, everyone who is running, all 37 of them, still on the lead lap here, Jason.
Yes, including Jason Fewens. So it's half a minute for first to 37th place at the moment. He might have had some other problems back there, Jason. Not sure. Looking at the field, heading down towards La Source, turn 1, couple more positions changing hands like Michael Whiting. Perhaps the next to think about challenging Greg Sharp. He's just gotten ahead of Robert Griffiths, I think, and then Darren Crosby is there. They're the cars side by side, now not with a little bit of overlap. Heading down towards Eau Rouge, track then immediately rises up. Get plenty of the curb, and they've got to stay within those track limits because we've just discussed. Big penalty if you cut the inside of the corner too badly there. Get it off track pretty easily as well. This is the power of the slipstream. Not enough to attack by the end of the lap. But if you get a slightly better run, particularly as the tyres start to wear down, big opportunity to overtake at the end of the Camel Straight. Just a slightly better run, and you'll reel them in right in time to try to fight. This will be Travis Hunt, Damien Cairns and Chad Lewis, 8th, 9th and 10th position. Cairns, the driver, making some positions here. Taking one away from Chad Lewis so far in this race. Travis Hunt being passed by a car or two as well in this race. And take a look at him. Travis Hunt driving the Mustang, Damien Cairns having to defend in his Commodore from Chad Lewis. And Travis Hunt probably pretty happy to see a battle like that, getting smaller in the mirror behind him, and a little bit of defensive car positioning, keeping the track position but costing a little bit of time to Damien Cairns, whose rear wing we now look through at Chad Lewis.
And Chad too, one of the drivers on Zoom here tonight, so unfortunately I couldn't do a three-way Zoom comparison, but it looks like that's not going to be needed here, as down towards the bus stop we go, and this defensive driving from Cairns. Going to stop up Chad Lewis here for a moment as he tries to get the power on down and make something work. Looks like he's going to be delayed for at least a couple of corners here.
Yeah, yet more defensive car positioning from Damien Cairns, trying to stave off Chad Lewis, letting Travis Hunt get away. It's bringing a couple of other quick guys into the picture here as well. We've spoken about David Kirby and Blake Delaney both making spots, and they're going to wheel up to the back of this battle as it continues. We're now starting the 7th lap since the whole field pitted, so that you'll have burnt down a decent chunk of fuel, perhaps 30, 35 litres. A little less because some of it was behind safety car, but the tyres also getting worn a tiny bit. Scott Gamble's back to 4th. Did he get a slowdown? Lead change. Tim Nicol, Ken Latta, Chris Miller go ahead to the top 3. And the driver who's looked unstoppable, untouchable for qualifying pace, for race pace, has had a mistake and an error, and he's back in a 4th place.
Yeah, I did not catch that one there. Talk about, yeah. And indeed I see Scott Gamble was driving slowly alert, so It's been a moment of relative calm in this race, but
His last lap was slow.
yeah, I'll go and grab that one for us. Yeah, it was on lap 10 indeed. They're currently on lap 11, so I'll grab that for us in just a couple of moments here. Just want to see if there's anything. Scott, he's not giving anything away though here on the Zoom feed. So with that all said and done, I think it's probably best we head to see what's caused all of this here. Might even go with the overtake that started first for Ken Latta, apparently.
Okay, so in this point, a lap ago, Scott Gamble is leading. Yep. Ken Latta. Yeah, oh, brake lights come on, yep. So it's too aggressive at the top of the hill at Radion for Scott Gamble. He's cut the course. He's had to slow down and give up the time gained. And it is a big penalty doing that. We talked about how costly it was for Van Loon. And for Scott Gamble here, he's too far to the left. No tyres on the curb. And he has to put the stoppers on along the straight. So he drops down to like 200 k's an hour. The rest of them doing 270, 280. There they go through. Ken Latta goes through. And then Tim Nicol makes the pass on Ken Latta for the race lead. So what are they putting in those Chubby Buns burgers? But they have done well for Tim Nicol. It's not the same thing a lap later, is it? No, it's a bit of a slide. Latta has a little bit of a slide with the change of direction. Car coming over the crest is unloaded, and if you give it too much steering input, can cost you. And so Tim Nicol was precise. Latta was a little oversteery, and that's when Tim Nicol went through to the lead of the race. A lot of change happening up front then.
That it has indeed. And right as we come back to live pictures there, including the Scott Gamble feed, focusing on him here for a second. They were close, but they're all going to happily sit in line. Now, for someone like Scott Gamble, who's been leading these drivers for so much this season, does he take the moment to sit back now and just save big? Well, into a Rivage on this particular occasion. No, he's going to take it somewhat aggressive, although being up the gearbox of Chris Miller, not completely aggressive in a race condition, David.
Yeah, 37 drivers racing means there's going to be a little bit too much action to cover all of it. So I think just as we were talking about the race lead, Greg Sharp lost a couple. So he's back to the 13th place here ahead of Whiting. Has Kirby lost one or two as well? Or no, I think I'm misremembering that. But it's so competitive around this top 10, almost sort of like 9th through to 17th at the moment. You could watch that and that alone and be entertained, but there's under a second for the top 3. Gamble will be thinking, how do I get back into this after the mistake that he had? And it just goes to show in cars like these, Eau Rouge and Radion is even more fearsome than it is for GT cars or single-seaters.
I mean, yeah, they bring the speed. These cars bring being on a knife's edge, it would appear, and having to be a lot more delicate with them because you can easily overcook it and just, well, thankfully run wide is seemingly where we're at more than have a big spin so far tonight. But look, could be proven very wrong.
That Latta had, right? Like if you don't catch that or you keep the foot in it, you could slide and snap into the Armco up the top there. Almost everyone's going, it's better to just run a little wide and serve a slowdown penalty than to over push it and end up in the wall. I've got my eye on who gets a slowdown penalty because Christian Smart had one a lap ago. Just who's getting a furled black flag for those track limits up Radion. Here's Damien Cairns and David Kirby side by side on the Camel Straight. So Kirby got a good run. He's nose in front, but he's round the outside. That's always going to be the challenge in this big braking zone. And he ends up ahead, scooting around the outside. 9 positions gained into the top 10 for David Kirby.
Yeah, that took a bit of bravery and a bit of cooperation from Mr. Cairns, and looks to have checked that box off very nicely indeed as they work their way into this 13th lap here as well. So good to see that stuff. You can also see in the back of the pack this grouping going through to Greg Sharp in 14th place, and Robbie Griffiths is just off the back of it there though. Looks like Griffiths has company, and speaking of company, is that Blake Delaney in behind us there. He's eyeing off Damien Cairns, but looks like not quite the case this time through Pooh.
And speaking of company, V8 Vets has a lot of great supporters that help us put on the broadcast and all of the great racing. And I believe there's some opportunities for Season 21 sponsors as well, if I read the Discord correctly. So thank you to everyone, particularly title sponsors, RaceKraft prize sponsors, Chubby Buns Burgers, and all of the other sponsors of V8 Vets. The drivers really, really appreciate it, and they enjoy this racing so much. We love watching it, and it's great chatting to them as well. So you've got this battle all around 10th. You've got the top 5 closing in as well. We know this pace that Scott Gamble's got. Very wise head on those shoulders as well to manage the strategy in these long 2-stop races so that he doesn't get caught out. He's going to try to find a way back into this race after just a little mistake. Different lines through the bus stop chicane. If you're not under pressure, then to take the second apex late and really get good drive down towards turn 1 is the way to go, but some feel the need to have to defend in that part of the lap, and then you end a little offline. Big move here from David Nash, came from a long way back. We just picked that up. So chance of a replay on that one. It was a couple of car lengths. It was big lobs.
All right, so I'll set us back to the approach to Blanchimont. So, yeah, that's a good couple of car lengths back for a machine with no ABS. And, early on the brakes, it seems, from Stephen Kennedy in comparison to David Nash. And, yeah, has to actually pull it up so hard he doesn't run into the back of Halal Cesar there in the number 5 Mustang. But job done. Yeah, front tyres might be a little worse for wear for David Nash, but starts making his way back forwards as someone's dropping down the order a couple of spots. I'm seeing it's Chad Lewis in the 727 has just lost, 2 spots. Yes, he's lost spots to David Kirby and now Damien Kent and Blake Delaney. They're all muscling him here on this lap.
Have a look, so close for Chad Lewis, now behind Kent and Delaney. Heading down the hill. I'm starting to see a couple more scruffy mistakes. Sure, it's a cool day, but the long, medium speed corners, high speed corners, that's where you're really putting so much load through the tyres, asking a lot of them. There is a couple of big stops and traction zones as well. Robert Griffiths is around in the back there. He's spun it on the way into Lafanya, and he's dropping some spots.
Yeah,
and going to struggle to rejoin as he stalled it as well. He's just waiting for a break in the traffic. There's so much traffic. You can't pull onto the racing line here in the chicane because the left-hand side of the road where he is becomes the racing line. You can't just merge onto it. And a little mistake becomes a big one for Robbie Griffiths, and second and third are just collided. Robbie Griffiths, this is the mistake that he made, locking the rears offline, a little bit on the marble, snapping back the other way. No grip on the painted concrete either. Ken Latter, my oh my, he's dropped nearly, I shouldn't exaggerate again, I think he's dropped 10 spots.
All right, let's see it here now. So out of Blanchimont we come. Latter checked, well, a little slow there compared to Miller and Gamble it seems, but into the final chicane. Oh dear me.
Domino's action there. You saw Scott Gamble get just a little bit of the back of Chris Miller here, that then sends him into Latter, who's perhaps saving more fuel than some of the others. And it is one into the other with a concertina effect into the bus stop braking zone. Scott Gamble loses a spot. Chris Miller loses 2. But the big loser, of course, is Ken Latter, as he has to whip it around and then serve the slowdown from cutting the chicane. Same, there was a slowdown for Miller as well. So Jeff Thomas goes to second, Dan Hall goes up into third. Scott Gamble is in fourth, but further away from the lead than he has ever been. Michael Stewart and Travis Hunt make spots there as well. David Kirby's up to 7th.
He has just knifed his way through everything here, it seems. And you can see there now the drivers with some of the most positions gained. And there's, in fact, the drivers with the most spots gained. David Kirby is up 11, which is a strong contender. But, well, actually tonight, I should say right now, biggest mover up the field, currently at plus 20. And the only driver not from Fishy Motorsports with a double-digit position gain so far, David. It's actually kind of crazy. Latham the most, and then the other big movers are McKnight from Fishy, Michael Whiting from Fishy, Blake Delaney from Fishy, and of course David Kirby there from Fishy, at least when we're talking in the upwards direction because there are a few, unfortunately, who have gone backwards so far from other teams tonight.
The other way to frame that is maybe Fishy can't qualify, but they're having great racing. And again, we've seen quite a lot of positions gained, not just from drivers with a poor qualifying who maybe lost one of their laps in qualifying to the track limits that have become so important in the race as well. But yeah, then a couple of incidents you can move through, pick up 3-4 spots. We've seen a couple of incidents where if you started 30th and have been clean since, you'd have gained 10 positions for free if your race pace is decent enough as well. So most positions gained in the bottom right of screen. We're behind Jamie McKnight on board with John Latham, the biggest mover so far. There was 3 or 4 drivers with no qualifying time, and that's not to mention those who might have lost their quickest lap and then only had their banker to put them on the grid.
Yeah, that would explain a lot there indeed. So I reckon there's going to be a move coming here in a moment. We'll see if we can ride with this one. And a little bit of communication there from McKnight. Don't quite know what that was, if that was actually awfully close to get a little an apology. Now, Paul Burns into the pits for a second time in this race. Unfortunately for Paul, I'm 99% certain, based on the fuel numbers, we're about 6 laps short of making it home from here. Inside is open for John Latham. Make that plus 21 if this pulls up here at the end of the Kemmel.
It does. You saw Jamie McKnight offer no defence on the Kemmel Kinky, even offered up the inside lane to send him through. So John Latham goes to the 15th position. There's a couple of trains and some great battles happening. Tim Nicol leads the race by 1.3 seconds over Jeff Thomas, who has 1.3 seconds to Dan Hall, who's under pressure now from Scott Gamble, beginning to find his feet again, back in 4th place. I think Gamble has dispatched of Michael Stewart recently, because Gamble did go from 4th back to 5th, now back up to 4th and pressuring the 3rd place. This is your championship leader in season 20 when you factor 20 drop rounds, but I think he's also been a very consistent driver, as well as a big scorer with some wins, and a couple of wins always makes you look good on any points table that factors in drop weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Gamble, this to honestly has probably been the biggest blip of the season, even though we're only 1/3 race distance and some in this one. Like, she can bring up some live points at this time. They're not quite perfect thanks to the license point scheme that the series has implemented. It's a bit hard for the overlays to factor it, but as you can see here, if the race was to suddenly end, as it does now, Scott Gamble's cracked the 1100 point barrier, and his nearest rival is Michael Whiting, who's currently 10th on the road at this time, so that would be a nice extension of his margin at this point. In fact, this actually might be one of the races where it potentially would be one of Gamble's drops at this stage.
Yeah. How many drivers do you think are getting away from this race with 0 incidents? Not many, I would presume, based on how many drivers didn't set a qualifying time, how many drivers didn't have a fastest lap at points. Dan Hall's going to give up 3rd place, just a little tap of the brake pedal to let Scott Gamble know you're close enough, you got to run. I'd rather you pull us up to the race lead than we fight, cause a roadblock, bring Michael Stewart, Travis Hunt and others into this battle. So Gamble now back into a podium position. His key rival in the championship, Michael Whiting, 14 positions gained in this race, runs 9th at the moment.
Yep, just picked off Chad Lewis there at the end of the Kemmel Straight on this 17th lap. So getting a good run there to improve his position. Another one there. I'm seeing an issue of some kind with Jason Fewens further on back. Not quite sure what that was. It happened right as Whiting was finishing off his pass on Chad Lewis. So on the other side of the circuit for him, unfortunately, there.
Last lap for Fewens, he lost about 17 seconds versus what you would expect, and he didn't hit. So despite rejoining the race, getting back on the lead lap, everything's not going perfectly for Jason Fewens. This is a replay with the Banter Alliance Racing driver breaking into the bus stop chicane, locking the rears and doing the full 180.
Well, that would explain a little bit there indeed, unfortunately for Jason. It looks like we might have just, dishing out our problems, or dishing out any curses, as Scott would say, remotely at this point, I think, because definitely doing a solid job on them tonight. So just back to live pitches. The train now 7th through 14th once you get outside the top 6 here, David. Mark pointing at the back of the train for now, but with the way he was close on the approach to the bus stop, I get the feeling that won't be for long if he can get a good run. Watch this pack work their way down the hill here. Start lap number 18 of 43 in this race, and hopefully get this nice green flag run to continue. As at the front of the field, Tim Nicol still doing a solid job. Gap at the end of the Camel Straight dropping to around 3/10, extending back up a little bit with the ebb and flow of this part of the circuit.
Take a look at the pace Scott Gamble has got, though. Last lap, am I saying this right? 1.3 seconds faster than Tim Nicol. Scott Gamble's last lap was rapid, and he's hauled them in.
Let's throw this up on the screen for you there. Yeah, that would add up.
But most of it in Sector 1 and Sector 3, which is interesting. Pretty equal with the race leader in the second sector. I think we've seen quite a bit of fuel saving lately from a lot of the drivers as well, and it's because the safety car brought everyone's first stop so early in the race that now you maybe need to extend this stint a little more and then into a longer final stint than you would like. So maybe with one green flag stop to come, you would imagine that maybe the drivers want to save a little more than if they had the flexibility around their 2 stops. They've basically been robbed of some of that flexibility, haven't they? And everyone's heading for a second stop at a pretty similar lap number.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly the point. As you said, to also reiterate some of the pre-race fuel numbers, we're looking at around 21 laps of fuel if they were going flat out the entire time. Saving, you can get to 22 without too much drama, and therefore add 22 laps. Cool, I guess 23 given the safety car lap. 2 safety car laps they had to do, sorry. So you could easily make that 23 laps, possibly challenge for 24 laps on a tank of fuel. As well, we're talking about, come in on lap 22 at the earliest and make it home versus going there for about 28, 29. That's the kind of numbers we're talking about here. So yeah, only 7 odd laps here on a fuel range at this point thanks to the safety car.
Another really quick lap from Scott Gamble. He's not the only driver in the 2:19s because Damien Cairns and John Latham had one at that pace as well. But again, significantly quicker than Tim Nicol and Jeff Thomas. He's back within 1 second of the race lead. Remember, he was 4 or 5 back not that long ago, and now he's all over Jeff Thomas. You see, we've got 0.6 of a second on board with the leader, back to Jeff Thomas in that second place. But Scott Gamble is all over him, and there's a lock up and wide at Rivage from the second place car. Feeling the pressure from Gamble, who's going to get a little bit of overlap on him. Look to crisscross over under with a better drive off of the no-name corner and down the hill. Good news for Tim Nicol as he gets a little bit more lead, but Gamble, great run down the hill, inside line into Huon, and he's through into second place. You didn't expect that you were going to hold Scott Gamble down for long.
No, that is true. Jeff Thomas, though, one of the few drivers this season in Split 1 to get a win away from your defending Split 1 champion in the form of Scott Gamble. In saying that, it did take a bit of a argy-bargy from Scott and Ken Latta at the very last corner on the very last lap at our season opener at Fuji to enable Jeff to get the win, but he was there all race long and therefore able to capitalise from that position as a result. We'll have to see, though, if maybe Tim Nicol can play spoiler here. The question is, you said, though, with the lap pace difference at this point in the session, unless Tim is looking to save fuel a whole bunch, which didn't really sound like it from on board there a moment ago as well to boot, you get the feeling we might be talking about the inevitable, unless there's a penalty incoming. So we haven't heard a penalty for Gamble yet for the contact with Ken Latta, I don't think.
No, I haven't seen anything written about it. A few of those drives from that are still coming through the field. So Miller's making up a couple of spots. Remember, he went back as far as 20th or so, and he's just gotten around Christian Smart, and then that's not you losing me, that's just me losing my train of thought. But yeah, Chris Miller's still back in the 18th here, but making a couple of spots, trying to fight his way back through.
Just in behind them, just trying to see if they pick up which car that was. It was Stewie Hall and Deeple. Sorry, that's who it was. Going side by side on the run to Eau Rouge. And maybe now's a good time in the middle of a high stakes battle pack. Yep, the Dino Dino is very much in a high activity mode here.
He's got a slowdown, so I wonder if that raises his heart rate or gives him an opportunity to catch his breath. I think for most drivers, the slowdown penalty is actually gonna raise your heart rate. He's up to 100, which is a significant stress level. That calorie number, oh, it's gone from 989 to 990 as we watch.
Yeah, the calorie counter does track up. I don't know how accurately it tracks up, but yeah.
I mean, it's fair to say that if you know with the size of the person and the heart rate, you can make a pretty good estimation. So if it also factors in, it knows your size, then it could be relatively accurate. Broadly speaking, calories burnt will track in line with your breathing rate and your respiration, which will also then track approximately in line with your heart rate. So they are a little tied together. Can we stay on board for the 1,000 milestone? He's almost there. He's almost there with the heart rate going at 101, battling, serving the slowdown. And there it is, 1,000 calories on the Dino Dino so far tonight.
And we're barely at the halfway race distance now. It won't mean he won't get to 2,000 calories because he did start the heart rate monitor.
He was only on 400 or so at the drop of the green flag.
Okay, so we're probably on our way to 1,600 calories in that case or thereabouts. What do we think we can get for that much? What's our calorie budget going to do for us tonight in that case? I do wonder.
I'll crunch some numbers on that one and we'll come back to it, I reckon. But yeah, it's tracking upwards for him at the moment. And Scott Gamble's tracking forward as he goes back to the race lead. Handful of laps back from 5th place. Now towards the race lead, ahead of Tim Nicol, ahead of Jeff Thomas. He's had a couple of little errors, but his pace has been supreme.
We've now got ourselves a three-way battle pack to look at as well, just behind the podium. Dan Hall, possibly a little cork in the bottle at this particular moment in time for Michael Stewart, and Travis Hunt in behind him. It sort of looks like it at this stage, and well, we've got Zoom feeds for both Travis and Michael, so I'll do this. I'll go on board with Dan Hall for the time being. But in behind, that's what the two drivers behind him look like at this stage.
Yeah, one racing on a couple of monitors there, and the other one racing in VR. Each of those with their positives and their negatives. VR racing can be pretty awesome, but yeah, the resolution of the headsets, sometimes you wish you had a little more so you could see further down the road. Sometimes your eyes get a little sweaty. Gonna have a look to the inside of Blanchimont. This is Brave on the kick on the way through. He shows a little bit of the nose. It's not gonna get him to the inside of Blanchimont.
Oh, I didn't get a chance to see how far back. Travis Hunt comfortably a little far back. It seems to the outside on the curb to the bus stop there. Can't get it rotated because Stewart's got that parked up fairly nicely. Both drivers rocking a sequential shifter, and I think that's also to boot a Jinx shifter there from the team here in Australia, making those sequential shifters. Yep, that's definitely a Jinx in the background of Stewart's shot there, and I'm pretty certain it's the black version for Travis Hunt versus the silver body model for Michael Stewart to boot.
Right up Radion, and it's the left-hander at the very top of the hill where the drivers have been running wide through Radion, cutting that part at the top of the hill and occasionally getting slowdown penalties. Quite a few little off tracks as well. 300 kilometers is a lot of racing to do as well and not run up against that incident limit. We've seen it's easy to do in these long races, especially if you're, middle pack, rubbing a little bit of elbows, occasionally just running a little wide off the road. They stack up quickly.
Meanwhile, a little further down the order, David, John Latham will not be deterred from gaining more positions. Now up to 14th, which is a plus 22, and Jeff Thomas is through into third place on Dan Hall. Although apparently going slow. Actually, sorry, pardon me, no, my bad. He was running up with the top three. He's fallen back to this next pair of cars. And that's why my brain was getting a little confused there. As I say, he's driving slowly, but he's in front of Dan Hall. How did that happen? He's been in front the entire dang time.
Yeah, Michael Stewart and Travis Hunt getting closer to Jeff Thomas and Dan Hall. When we saw earlier, a few of these drivers, they didn't want to battle with Scott Gamble. They didn't want to, go side by side, lose too much time and end up immediately in the grips of a couple of these drivers who are charging forward. Oh, look at the counter steer. There you go. These tyres, they're forced to run long in this middle stint because of how early they stopped in the first stint. Drivers would have run 5 laps longer in the first stint and then not have to do as many laps on the tyres in the middle and the final stint. But because of the way the safety car fell, where within the pit window, everyone forced to make their first stop early, and they are really going to suffer on these tyres before they can even think about even just fueling to get to the end.
We're at the point where they can make it home now on this ending lap 22. They could have done it on this lap. Definitely do it here at the end of lap 23. Of course, that still leaves you with 20 laps on a set of tyres, which is still less than what you've done on this current set of tyres. So if you think it's bad enough now, you're still going to have to go longer and without a safety car reprieve at this particular point in time to help you out there. As David Nash is going backwards, is that because of a spin? It is.
At the bus stop chicane, the final sequence of corners on the lap for Nash. Time and positions lost. And all by himself, is he going to Jason Fewens it? You know what? I think he is. In a little hot, loses the rear, loses it a lot later, and then 360. But he will not like what he sees. Gets going again, but again, those tyres, they are nearly cooked at this point. Everyone's had their tyres on for 18 laps. Nash has really heated those ones up. Going deep into the braking zone.
Yeah, and to add insult to injury, it would appear that wasn't the end of his troubles because he's got a black flag next to his name and it hasn't come from race control. So that means he's going to be our first driver that we've seen tonight to run over the 17 incident point limit here tonight at barely over the halfway stage. So unfortunately for David Nash, that's going to mean an extra trip to the pit lane here, David.
Yeah, it's going to be still struggling with the rear locking, the rear chirping around as he goes into these braking zones. Those tyres will be super toasty still, as well as just being old. But yeah, I'm very, very sure there's many other drivers precipitously close to that incident limit as well, and that's just the first that we've seen.
Part of several battles in this field. One of them here is Chris Blanchard trying to hold back Craig Friend at this time. Chris, also one of our drivers on Zoom tonight, David, so I'll give him some screen time. Was actually, when I think about it, we haven't probably shown Chris every single time he's been on the camera, and probably a small apology for that one there. Just with the number of drivers who are joining the Zoom feed because of the fact that it's worth the championship point, means we sometimes have a bit of a hard time keeping up with everyone in this field sometimes, week in, week out.
Into Blanchimont too wide would be a big ask. And so that's not on. A couple of drivers opting to pit now. 20 laps to go. So Michael Stewart and Craig Sharp are in. Sharp being one of Blanchard's teammates, but they're not going to pit together. One or two drivers thinking, okay, I've done 19 laps on these tyres now. 20 to go. That's a pretty even split. So next lap around, I guess, you're on the other side of that. You've done 20 laps, maybe 18 green flag laps on the tyres. knowing that everyone pitted right as the safety car picked up the field. Whereas you anticipate 20 green flag laps to get us to the end of this one at the moment.
Well, definitely will be 20 laps, whether it's all green, whether we maybe get another safety car intervention. That's entirely up to how the drivers play things out here. It looks like on this particular occasion, Blanchard will, well, eventually he's practically made to concede to Craig Friend there. The old mate and son's Mustang will take the inside line and can maintain an advantage there through Lecombe and Melmedy on this occasion.
I know the ship has sailed on this like 40 minutes ago, but you remember when Craig Friend was in a little bit of, teammate altercation there?
I do indeed, yes.
I mean, with friends like that, who needs enemies?
Oh, well, the fun thing is they're still together. Actually, no, pardon me, no, that's another teammate there. Darren Goosey, now the nearest old mate and son's car to Craig Friend. Gary Buckland is, he's just saw him for a moment there, a little further on down the order. And we'll see how things play out there in due course. Obviously, no one wants to crash into your team. It is also the golden rule of all things racing.
That was what surprised me about it, is that it kind of boxed in his own teammate who had a run on a car that they were both trying to pass. And so, then not enough space was quite given. Pit lane is going to light up again with Travis Hunt. So, like I said, these tyres just reaching 20 laps, about 18 green flag laps, with 19 more laps to go. A few more drivers are going to think about pitting. Not your leaders just yet, with the exception of Travis Hunt. So Scott Gamble, Tim Nicol, Jeff Thomas, Dan Hall, Blake Delaney, David Kirby all stay out another one. It was quick on the lap just completed. Michael Whiting had a pretty zippy little lap. So he's caught up to the back of David Kirby. That's the battle that we check out right now. And he breaks the throttle just a little bit. I don't know what he was quite trying to do there. Was he thinking he was close enough to get the move or not? And then, of course, the car that he's behind was also getting the slipstream off Blake Delaney. So maybe that hindered Michael Whiting's ability to really have a go at David Kirby. A couple of teammates around this part of the order as well.
Oh, trouble for Chris Blanchard. Big trouble for Chris Blanchard.
At Radion, and he can't go nowhere. The engine's popped. Blanchard's at a stop at the top of the hill. We're just approaching when drivers would want to make their second pit stop. Is this going to bring out the safety car again? And it will. We go safety car for the second time, and drivers might make no green flag stops in this one. Now, does this hurt or hinder those that have already made their stops?
Still could help them here, because unlike real-world racing, where when a safety car's called, of course, you have enforced delta times and the like, which means you lose less time pitting. For these drivers out here on the sim, we can't enforce that, so they'll be hammering it around flat out. And therefore, if you've got fresh tyres on, that's a lap where you can go and possibly find a couple of tenths in the corners as a result. So everyone else here at the front of the field, we will watch them now pile on in for the second and final compulsory stop they'll need to complete in this race.
Like lap 4 when the safety car came out, cannot see a reason why anyone who hasn't pitted yet wouldn't take the opportunity with this safety car. It'll get you your second stop cleared. It'll get you to the end of the race on fuel and on these tyres and right on cue. Absolutely all of them piling into the lane. Everyone should be well familiar with where their crew is this time around though. The question is, perhaps now you need to make a decision on how much fuel to take. Oh, still saw someone overshoot their pit crew. Chris Miller has a very interesting strategy to make sure he's got clear vision of where his lollipop man is. But yeah, now you've got to make a decision on exactly how much fuel to take. There might be some variation to these pit stop times.
Yeah, I'll be watching to see here. For Travis Hunt, for comparison, is one of the few drivers who came in under green. He did 36 seconds of fuel. Scott Gamble also does 36 seconds of fuel as he rolls away out of the pits. as Michael Stewart's going to jump to third, I think it is. Yep, third place. Tim Nicol will hang on to second through the pit stop cycle shuffle. But the 919 having undercut by pitting a lap earlier. I do believe it was just picked off. Yeah, Jeff Thomas, Dan Hall. He will have gotten the pair of them there in this cycle.
Yeah, so even with those who remained out on track doing race pace towards pit entry, there was a big undercut opportunity with 20 lap old tyres. If you put on a new set compared to some of those, then you stand a real chance at undercutting. Damien Cairns has just gone into the wall at Radeon. Behind the safety car, Damien Cairns has gone into the wall.
What on earth has happened here? Hang on.
Is that
contact? Check up. Yeah, that's a... All right, let's go back one more time with feeling. They all check up.
Oh, he might have some technical problems as well. So he's probably half parked it, and then he's reappeared inside someone that sent him off. So again, really weird issue, but I think it starts with a technical problem for Damien Cairns. You saw Chris Miller pass him. I don't think Chris Miller saw Damien Cairns, and that's why he passed him under safety car.
Yeah, that would explain a bit there for a second. I was a little confused as to Chris Miller. Oh, that's got to be something likewise technical too. Just gone. But we're right on board. Get over the shoulder shot for this one, David. Unfortunately, straight on for Chris Blanchard too, and that's going to be a problem there. Yep. Oh, big freeze.
Yeah, steering locks in, doesn't it? You don't see it wobbling. It's rigidly locked at not enough steering angle. So then Chris Blanchard goes wide into the wall, knocks the motor straight out of that thing, and he is going nowhere. That's what brought out the second safety car of the race. And then eventually he was able to tow. He's back on the lane now, perhaps with some significant damage. So out of these stops we've just seen, I'm looking, who had a long one? Mark Poynton might have overshot his box, cost him a couple of spots. You've got a little variation in how much fuel the drivers took, nothing massive, but you look to say David Kirby, Michael Whiting, Chad Lewis, they look to have had pretty zippy little stops. Same too for Michael Stewart, just 33 seconds of fuel for Stewart's why he's up in third. So he took a shortish fuel and an undercut.
Yeah, let's bring that up here actually for, say, our top... I can do four at a time. Let's go our top four of Scott Gamble, Tim Nicol, Michael Stewart, and it's now Jeff Thomas behind him. And yeah, just show up in bigger text. Everyone can see that a little more clearly there on screen. So yeah, Gamble, Nicol, they're fueled and they're good to go flat out. No issues there. Will that 2.5 to 3 seconds of fuel less for Stewart, which at this levels of refilling, that's worth about 7 litres of fuel, David.
And what's interesting is Stewart took that fuel number before he knew there was going to be a safety car, whereas Gamble and Nicol took their fuel number knowing they were then going to do 1 or 2 laps behind the safety car. In this case, it's looking like 2, isn't it? So they took that fuel knowing the savings they were going to have. Stewart took that fuel thinking we were going to be flat out to the end.
Which would suggest he's, definitely not, as there's a bit of chatter on the radio just a little bit further back in the queue here, so sorting out the order of drivers when they came out of the pit lane. That's what we just heard there. So Blake Delaney actually up to P6 to be plus 14 at this time, according to what I'm seeing. Does that match up with where he started? 21st? Yep.
Yeah, so a couple of big movers after all. There's Michael Whiting, of course, a couple more in the 9th place. John Latham plus 28. No one's getting towards that. No one's matching that John Latham number. But I always want to say it's plus 25 once you count some of the other cars in session. I always say I don't want to call the biggest mover someone who just plain didn't qualify. But no doubt it's been a big move up through the field for John Latham, and we saw from qualifying him and some others struggling with the track limits. Because one off track anywhere around the lap, and that lap doesn't count. You only get 2 laps total in qualifying. If you're right up against the limit in qualifying, then the many myriad of places you could run off track with too much speed includes the top of Aradion, outside of the double left-hander Pouon, the outside of Stavelot, outside of Blanchimont, and many others.
I thought I'd also take a moment here whilst we're back under safety car, David, to
Bad news.
have a quick look at the Zoom wall.
A whole Woolies chocolate mud cake, 2,100 calories.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we're not making it there for Dean Flavel. At the same time, that would be a very irresponsible consumption of an entire Woolworths chocolate mug cake, I would have thought. It's not the thing we probably want to be promoting. As a confirmation from race control, we will be going green at the end of this lap and get the second restart of this race with 16 laps to go in that case.
So, of course, race leader Scott Gamble, the highest placed driver on that list. Kirby's gained a decent number of spots. He runs in 8th at the moment. Poor Jason Fewens, things not quite going as well for him. Stewart's in 3rd, and he's racing in VR. Maybe resting those hands a little bit. Got him high up on the wheel. Interesting to see what hand placement each driver has behind the safety car. Blanchard is at sort of 9 and 3. Chad Lewis there is that at 9 and 3. Scott Gamble goes the West Coast lowrider, one hand at the 12 o'clock on the top of the wheel, you know, chin up, how you doing, ladies? And then Stewart also resting both of his hands up high on the wheel.
Some interesting character profiles there delivered to you by one David Haynes, ladies and gentlemen. And let's say that they all seem to check out fairly well. So everyone should be good for fuel. Although, as you said, drivers like Michael Stewart coming in under green flag conditions and with a shorter stop, might he still have to save a little bit? I would think so here, because they are asking a decent amount in terms of the actual range potential around the circuit of Spa-Francorchamps here in these cars. So half a lap till we restart, David. Scott Gamble back in the race lead. Can anyone challenge him here for the second half?
Well, it's tough to see based on those fuel numbers, Gamble needing to save too much in this back stint. No one behind him has fresher tyres than him. A couple of drivers behind him have slightly older tyres than him in the shape of Michael Stewart, Travis Hunt, Greg Sharp, anyone who pitted before the safety car came out. There goes that safety car as we enter the 3rd sector, and Scott Gamble will leave some space to it with those behind. So I'm looking drivers who were in podium contention earlier on. Miller and Latter are now 14th and 15th. So they're my drivers to maybe move forward.
Yeah, it's been quiet. So yeah, been quiet in this middle stint, which should have actually maybe speaks to the spread of the field up until the safety car there. So yeah, prime opportunity. They're only about, according to my timing, a couple of seconds back, but Scott Gamble drops the hammer on the approach to Blanchimont, so he will string this field out here for the second race restart here. Lap 28 about to begin, with 16 therefore to come here for this 8th round of the RaceKraft V8 Vets Championship here in season number 20.
Yeah, Scott Gamble heard the race control call that the safety car was in pit lane. It was then his prerogative, and he went early on it before Blanchimont corner. Maybe got a little deep into the bus stop there. Tim Nicol was pretty close to him as we get racing once again, and it left a bit of a gap in some places in the field, like Latham in 11th to Greg Sharp in 12th. There's over 2 seconds. A few of them were not expecting the race leader to go that early, and it has strung out the field a little bit off of this race start. Here is John Latham. He was not caught napping at all, and he's all over Chad Lewis heading up the hill. Fair bit of brakes with all of that fuel on board and in tight company with the rest. Breathing down the neck of Chad Lewis, who's not going to provide any defense to John Latham, who'll now move another spot forward potentially. The slipstream's strong on the racing line, so Latham's going to have to be really good on the brakes to get ahead, and he is.
Yep, braking performance is where it's going to be at for the number 24 machine, and now in the top 10. Now knocking on the door of gaining even more positions here. Thanks to this reset just in behind there. That's Chris Miller. Yeah, was eyeing off Greg Sharp's 12th place position at the time. Can't make it work though. Down into Rivage. And so we'll have to try again at another time on this lap.
Yeah, you see that gap from Greg Sharp up to those ahead. And that happened off the safety car restart. As it was like, is the guy in front of me going? Oh, we are going. And it creates a bit of a gap. Miller just a tiny bit wide, but probably still within track limits. Another one of those places where you could be racking up the incident points. It might come back to bite a couple of drivers late on in this race. We've only seen 1 or 2 drive-throughs to this point. Jason Fewens has had to serve one, but he was not the only. Who else had one?
It was David Nash in the 911.
Yes.
Who I definitely know he had one. I didn't quite catch Jason Fewens getting one, if he did.
Well, I'm just seeing that he's been through the lane 4 times and the last one looks like a drive-through. Seen him a couple of opportunities where he might have gained a couple of incident points, like you'd get 2 from locking up and spinning out. In the bus stop chicane here, where Ken Latter is looking at Darren Crosby. So not a... Right, no, a good restart from Chris Miller as he's picking off spots, but Ken Latter is taking a little bit longer to be able to get in there and do it. John Latham, fastest lap of the race on the one just completed. Not bad. Those new tyres working very, very well.
Yep, fresh tyres, a whole bunch of draft up the Kemmel straight, although it was actually more side draft once he got past, because he got past alongside Chad that was pretty early along the stretch. As a result, will take himself the bonus point for fastest lap at this time. A 10th faster than Scott Gamble's best, although interestingly, if I bring Scott Gamble to the screen here, will this actually show his last lap? It will. How about that there?
Yeah, but there was an off-track somewhere on it, so we know that he's picked up 1 or 2 because his last lap was faster than his best. But lap time deleted due to track limits. Doesn't actually mean anything other than that that lap can't count for the fastest lap of the race. You see that on the left-hand side. He's getting away from Tim Nicol. Michael Stewart's looks good off of this restart. Theoretically should have a car a little bit lighter than those in front as well, and if he's got enough fuel to go to the end, then that's not a bad place to be. It's just a tiny bit lighter.
And maybe needs to sit here for a couple of laps, just guarantee the fuel numbers are A-OK, and then you can open up the legs of that Mustang and let the ponies sing. That'll be the question, at least on our minds, for a little bit here, and it might be determined based on what we see here in the next little part of this race.
It's all over Tim Nicol, but you need an overlap into Blanchimont, and even then you'd be very, very brave. You'd normally think about the bus stop as an overtaking opportunity. A couple of car lengths lost through Blanchimont there as Michael Stewart didn't want to push too much. He's got no pressure from behind. Jeff Thomas isn't close enough. Dan Hall might come under pressure from Blake Delaney, 5th and 6th place there. Delaney's been a big mover in this race, and then the safety cars brought him, of course, back in line on strategy with everyone. It's been a bit of a lackluster race for strategy, but a really good one for wheel-to-wheel racing.
Speaking of wheel-to-wheel, Ken Latter up the inside of Darren Crosby at La Source will take 14th place away from the 66. The doors open for Christian Smart there in the background, it seems. Although he's going to have to duke that one out up the hill here through Eau Rouge and Radion and won't get it done. But that does mean he's in prime position now for a healthy dose of slipstream, although I think the attempt to contest the spot, there's going to be Crosby. Yep, he's in the toe of Latter, and that should mean that's fairly sorted out. Chris Miller, on the other hand, continuing to try and press forward to the inside and through on Greg Sharp.
Yep, got to the inside. Sharp didn't find much grip on a track that's probably picked up a decent amount of marbles over this, particularly the end of the last stint. The tyres were so old for a lot of the drivers. Delaney is going to get his move on Hall for 5th place. Dan Hall's dropping a handful of spots. Down the hill, he gets a bit of contact. David Kirby and Michael Whiting fanning out in this battle, 5th through to 11th. Heading into Puon, Delaney and Travis Hunt getting through on Dan Hall before Dan Hall could stabilise to then hold off the next of the horde when they are this close. And someone makes a move on you, you get out of line, you can get freight trained.
Yeah, unfortunately missed the actual freight training in the moment there. We've got 3 Fishy Motorsport drivers in Delaney, Kirby, and Whiting. You've then got
to be the one to watch here.
Yeah.
Fastest lap of the race, 20-some positions gained, and looking like he's got, he's got the fastest lap of the race. Of course he's got podium pace. He's the picture of podium pace if he's setting purple sectors out there. And he's in behind Whiting, Kirby, Hall. He's got to be a little bit patient to bide his time to pick off just 1 or 2 at once if he can. Dan Hall, I think, is having to save a lot of fuel here as well because he comes under pressure from Kirby in the braking zone. On board with Latham, we try to go round the outside of Whiting, and I think we will in the bus stop. That is a super gutsy move to swoop around the outside. Just gets enough drive off the tight line on the exit, but I think he'll be able to hold on to this spot. Just a tiny bit of overlap still from Whiting, who's not going to give it up into La Source, but will get pinched super tight. Traction off the corner. They're still side by side.
Yeah, Whiting doesn't want to give it up. Latham's going to give him all the space he has to make this work out. And to the inside of Eau Rouge, that will now be his. He can finally swing across and take the position away from the 025 up Radion.
Slow down. Whiting was too aggressive there. He cut the corner at the top of Radion. He pulls to the side. He has to step on the brakes. Christian Smart's also got one in. Well, it was 3rd place. At 3rd place, no more. Oh, sorry, Christian Smart's further back in the pack. I've confused him with Stewart for some reason.
There's plenty of 9s going around. He's still got to serve it here through Lecombe and through a couple of corners. There's not going to still, and it's just clear now. Basically in the apex of Melbourne, he'll fall back to his teammate Jamie McKnight and be in 17th place. I do have to apologise to the drivers here at Fishy tonight. Some issues with paints being loaded off training paints means that a couple of cars are stuck sans paint without possibly nuking everyone's paints. And as much as I'd rather get everyone's paints, 95% of the paints is better than starting from scratch.
Yeah, a couple of the Fishies got canned.
Okay, yeah, that one. That one's material I guess we can use. I'll leave it to you.
Here, so I feel like I have to try not extra hard, but I got to get 1 or 2 in there. So yeah, Michael Whiting, another one of those drivers there. He had that slowdown penalty. He was battling Latham for 9th. Now he's 13th off of that, so lost quite a few spots. It's not like it prevents you fighting for a spot or it costs you 1 spot. A slowdown at the top of Radion will cost you many, many spots. Excitement still behind Dan Hall as there's a couple of other drivers going to look to pass him. David Kirby potentially could be the next. Good run through Blanchimont, middle of the road for Hall. Means Kirby's going to look around the outside of the bus stop. It doesn't work, then Hall runs in deep. Kirby's going to look to get that nose back underneath on the exit. He gets to power with his nose right underneath the rear wing of the driver in front, which stops him getting to the inside line for the next corner at La Source. He doesn't want to go round the outside of him there, so he drops back into line and has Latham all over him. Big concertina effects, these Chad Lewis and Chris Miller make bumper-to-bumper contact there as well.
Oh boy, it's getting feisty. Gentlemen, we've still got 12 laps to go here at the start of this one that they've just begun. As all of them pressing the limits up and over Radion there. That had to surely have been an X for John Latham as he rode on board with him there, I think. And Dan Hall, I don't know what it is. I'll probably have to go on board with him at some point to confirm if he's saving fuel. I get the feeling it is because the draft hasn't looked super strong up the Kemmel Straight unless you have a really bad run through Eau Rouge. He's still defending like a man, but let's see what Latham can do with it, David, because he wants to go with someone like David Kirby, but he's going to have to be careful not to get left behind if he fights too hard.
Certainly, in some way, Hall is struggling for a bit of pace. There's another sort of 10 cars around here that are just a little quicker than him, as evidenced by a few cars that have gotten past, Blake Delaney, Travis Hunt, now David Kirby. You've got Shane Randell is going to get out of the gravel. Okay. I was wondering if that car was dead in up against the wall in the gravel trap. It's not. Heading down into... Is that Nash behind him?
It is. Oh!
Whoa. Dug in sideways, dug into the gravel, and that flipped him. A la, going into the chase at 250 k's an hour. So, on board now with David Nash. He was unsighted. He was just not expecting that braking point from Randall, and he tried to sort of cut back to the inside and got him.
Well, thankfully the 501 is rolling once again, but yeah, it's done a number on that. And, well, I've had the... I'm not sure if you can call it... Oh, we'll talk about that later, because we've got plenty of action here for second and third. And Dan Hall's having to fend off Chad Lewis. Sorry, Dan Hall fending off John Latham, who's fending off Chad Lewis, I should say. Fishy in Chris Miller and Ken Latter in the mix as well. It's getting all kinds of fights here for 8th place, still with 11 laps to go.
Chris Miller's smart. He doesn't want to go side by side up over Rouge and Radion. He tucks back in behind, but John Latham gets a slowdown. Travis Hunt gets a slowdown. Halil Cesar has a drive-through. It's all going to happen in these last 10 laps. The drivers have got to mind their track limits, mind their off tracks. And a driver who's charging through the field, John Latham, now drops back another whole heap of spots.
Oh, it's still not done yet. He's got to try and back off some more here through Melmody. He hasn't got it cleared. There you go, gets cleared now. After the exit of Melmody, and as a result, that makes things a little precarious for him there. And it gives Dan Hall a breather. He's now got himself about half a dozen car lengths back to Chris Miller. So, a moment of respite is his. But for how long, we now ask.
Fastest driver on track last lap was 4th place Blake Delaney. So you saw he was catching Tim Nicol and Michael Stewart in that battle, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Then we pulled back to some of these other battles like David Kirby, Travis Hunt, the Dan Hall show, as I think we're going to have for the last 10 laps of this race. But Delaney got a great run on the previous lap. Obviously would have just picked up the tail end of the toe off the podium, and that would have helped him as well. Nichols sliding around a little bit. Travis Hunt sliding around a little bit. Now, the end of that second stint, the drivers were doing 221s, 222s. They got new tyres, boom, straight into the 218s. By the end of this stint, I think they're going to be sliding around on some pretty second-hand tyres.
Yep. Well, yeah, they haven't had a chance to break this race up into 14, 15 lap stints. They've had to go nearly 20 laps or over 20 laps on their opening, their middle set of tyres. As Dan Hall to the pit lane with the iRacing black flag. He joins the rostrum of drivers, unfortunately, to come unstuck there. The Dan Hall show is no more, David.
It's on hiatus. It'll get a reboot on a streaming platform for sure. But yeah, that drive through for Dan Hall. I don't think the Dan Hall show is necessarily over though, because like I say, across the next 9 laps, the number of other drivers who might get a drive through is significant. Now the other drivers that need to be just a little bit careful. So some other drivers might rejoin where Dan Hall finds himself now, and it'd be game on once again. This is on board with Tim Nicol in 3rd place. Another good lap, last lap from Blake Delaney.
Just heard over the radio, David, that David Nash will be given a post-race points penalty for his contact with Shane Randell that we just reviewed a couple of moments ago.
Last lap a little off from Jeff Thomas. So he fell away from these podium places and podium battles. Michael Stewart's, I think, getting away from Tim Nicol a little bit as well. That's good news for him in 2nd. Scott Gamble just managing his lead gap again, you'd imagine, as confirmation of the post-race points penalty. Blake Delaney started this race in 21st. He runs 4th right now. He's had some good pace since the safety car pulled back in. Now he's looking for third place. Look at that late apex. Trying not to slide the car, putting the power down. He's got all of that luxury where he doesn't need to brake super deep into any of these corners. He just needs to get on a good line to let him smoothly roll into the throttle and put down 650 horsepower.
Going to leave us here for a second as well and see what the lap time is, because apparently right now they're tracking for mid to low 19s. For Blake Delaney, though, that's just made a meal of this current lap. Jeff Thomas has to park, gets the bus parked.
Contacting the bus stop. Chad Lewis has been spun around. Now, was it... Oh, gosh. I don't know who was alongside him, but he's also going to have a long, long wait to be able to rejoin. You'd almost want to pull further back into the runoff to get going for Chad Lewis. It was a late, very, very late look down the inside here from Ken Lacker.
Around he goes, yeah, and front of Michael Whiting's car gets clipped for good measure. And it's caused Chad Lewis and iRacing black flag for incident points to add misery, add on to the pain there of that one. So, my goodness, that has...
The road on the Camel Straight. Man, this race is going off because everyone is so tightly packed because we've had two safety cars that have absolutely neutralized any strategy variation. Everyone's fighting on the same age tires. Everyone knows every battle is for position at the end of this race. I've just seen Latham run off the road on the Camel Straight trying to pass Michael Whiting. Got a run, and I think he looked for a gap that was closing, and it wasn't quite past on the grass. So
pick it up here if we can. Oh! And yeah, add another driver to the tally. Ken Latta, black flag now is his. And yep, okay, right, John. All right, John. Oh, there's no space for you there. Although he's going to still force the door open. Whiting relents.
Now, they both went right at the same time. It was not a block in defense, but Latham saw a window, and by the time he went for it, he was gone. He didn't want to yield, and then he wasn't going to get let back on the track by Michael Whiting. Really interesting little bit of racing, and it has been just extra mental, I think, because of the long stint lengths now on the tyres beginning to age, plus just no variation. So you don't go, oh, this guy's got 5-lap newer tyres, he's coming through, he'll be able to make this pass easily because there's some tyre offset all through the field. Nope, there's none of that. Oh, careful with that contact, because Ken Latta now also has a drive-through as well. You're going to run out of ways to count all those drivers. And I believe that's... was that one from race control or one from...
No, that's the incident points once again.
So we might get another one from race control? What's the go there?
Oh, yeah, if he's... Yeah, he could still be penalised for it, because Chad Lewis got pinged for it. His own incident point violation, so I do believe those penalties will still be applied separately. Just coming back up to the front of the field while we can. Gap, or battle I should say, for third place, still unchanged. Although going on the per lap counts, still the advantage lies the way of Blake Delaney for lap time, David, but Tim Mickle holds firm in third.
Sure does. They go through Rivage and it's mighty close. It is interesting to keep an eye on some of the drivers in this stage about who's sliding it around a little more versus who looks precise. The moment I said Delaney looks pretty precise, he kind of locked up and slid wide through the bus stop earlier on. Now Nickel looks a little wide and out of sorts. You've still got a long way to go in these stints. They've done 10 laps since the safety car, so realistically 8 laps on the tyres. And they got quite a decent distance to go. The track temp's not super aggressive or abrasive. There's another iRacing black flag comes through for the incident points in what's been a pretty bruising race all around, both with those track limits, but also some of the contact we've seen, drivers leaning on each other, contact, spins, all of that.
Actually wanted to bring it up here since, well, Travis Hunt's one of our drivers on Zoom. Yep, there's the shake of the head from Travis. Oh, unfortunately, duking out and dicing here. Yeah, I'm trying to run the numbers.
He gets renewed and gets another character arc on the Dan Hall show.
That is true. He can join the party there. As to the inside goes Chris Miller. And I don't think that'll be fought too hard because, yep, he will immediately exit stage right. And the pit lane will be his destination. And yeah, we'll see if he can link up with Dan. Or Dan's not too far back, although, in saying that, look who's lined up line astern here.
Dan Hall, Ken Latter in 19th and 20th, just behind Robert Chrisdale. Travis Hunt is almost done with his drive-through. You get to skip a little bit of La Source, so the blend is pretty nice to you here at Spa. He lights up the rear tyres, kicking off the pit lane speed limiter in first gear, really revving up those tyres, and he's right in the middle. Now he's side by side with Dan Hall on the way into Eau Rouge and Radion. Dan Hall gets ahead. And I told you there'd be a couple more episodes to this show.
Yeah, it might not be for top 5 positions, but apparently it still delivers. Even if maybe some of the fans have let it go over the years. And because of this restart particular Ken Latter now trying up the inside. But I was just going to say, as he said, with this whole double safety car periods coming right at the time for pit stops. Oh, all over the back. And, well, Travis Hunt, he's being removed from the show. David, he's just been issued the first drive-through penalty of the race, I believe, for his incident there. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so Ken Latter. Travis Hunt's just served his drive-through for incident points, but Ken Latter is going to have a drive-through for the, 3 car lengths back contact that he made at the bus stop. So that is Ken Latter, black flagged, drive-through penalty.
That it is.
Pretty willing and ferocious in this part of the field. Scott Gamble just maintaining a 3.5 second lead over Michael Stewart. And you see in third, Tim Nichols still holding off Blake Delaney, who using up the best of his tyres. Is he using them effectively?
Oh, it's so...
a few of them run wide. Delaney's through on Nickel. Smoke in the air. Jeff Thomas is close now.
I was starting to wonder who of these drivers has got tyres left, because they've been having to push pretty hard. And, well, let's go have a look at that pass here real quick, because it literally happened just before we got to it. Wisdom turned away from that. Ken Latter dropping down the order, taking his penalty.
Perhaps a bit of a late move from Delaney to get down the inside on Nickel here. Exit of Blanchimont, you see, that's not a perfect line from Nickel. Delaney's like, I got a bit of a run, the inside's half covered, but then they just both lock up and run wide. Nickel runs wider, drifting through into third place. Went Blake Delaney.
Delaney's lost a spot. He got the slowdown, I think, up for Rouge Radion. Oh, should have watched the replay to enjoy it, and then apparently, no, that was the wrong decision to make, because, or has he just got it? Let's watch this here. On the roof of Tim Nickel.
So he might have just had a bad run, but not a slowdown. So up the hill we go.
Bad run.
In track limits and just has a bad run, bad slide.
No, good spot indeed. Although nearly gets the left front headlight of Tim Nickel driving through his car. For a second I was like, oh, he's up to P3, very nice. Nope. Delaney was showing P5, and Tim Nickel back on the podium. Oh, and Jeff Thomas has been passed back by Blake Delaney whilst we're on replay. So these three now going to deliver all the action and fun there, as I'll get things sorted out in the background, because nothing like a bit of drama to make a meal of production here tonight. Oh, we've still got a fight here for 6th place, David. 4 cars in it still. And it looks like also, for good measure, I've had a moment. So I'll be back with David as soon as I can. Meanwhile, so we've got Nickel, Delaney, Thomas, one battle. We've now got Kirby, Miller, Whiting. Can John Latham stick with? It looks like for a moment here he's slightly dropped off the back. Whether has he used up the best of his tyres here, as Delaney through on Nickel once again. on the exit of the bus stop chicane. Coming to 5 laps to go now here at the start of lap 39. Thomas elbows out through La Source. I think he gets it done there as well on the 23. So Nickel not too impressed. The headlights coming out in full display there. And hopefully we'll have David Haynes back with us.
With a drive-through penalty because of the incident limit, it's Gary Buckland. So again, the tyres have still got to last 5 more laps. The fuel's got to last 5 more laps. The driver's temper's got to last 5 more laps. And the incident limit has got to last 5 more laps of this kind of racing. Scott Gamble's lead looks even prettier over the rest of the field as Stewart's not quite able to go with him, and 3rd, 4th, 5th cannot help but throw punches at each other. Delaney eventually settling into that 3rd place, but he made it look like very, very hard work.
Yeah, he did. And well, what it's done is it's meant Michael Stewart is now looking, well, he's losing time to Gamble, sure, but he's now got 4 seconds back to Delaney. If there's any fuel concerns, Michael, now's the time to do some big old rolls, save the fuel, and then get back in the get the boot back in it for the end of the race.
If you've got a fuel number to hit, it's always better to be a little ahead of it than a little behind it. So if you crunch the numbers and you go, oh, I've got to do 5 litres per lap, it's better to, at the start of the stint, do a couple of laps, 4.9, 4.8, 4.9, and then be able to go maybe a little richer at the end than to end up with a really big debt that means you have to save a litre or a litre and a half or something on the final lap. So if you can be just a little bit ahead of that number, a little bit high of the glide slope, if you will, that's the way to manage out the stint. So with a couple of laps breathing space here, if there's any concerns about it, that's the way to go.
With that approach to the bus stop chicane, I'd say he's pretty happy with his fuel number because there was no attempt to lift, no attempt to save. There was a short shift there to boot, which probably allows him to go 100% throttle straight out of the bus stop. So, can't really see Scott Gamble ahead. Can we see Blake Delaney through the rear window? There's a word there for that. The answer is yes, if you look very closely or I mess with the camera. He's back there.
Yeah. I love that Hitchcock film. I don't think we're going to see Michael Stewart's neighbours getting up to any crime, though. He's in a nice little bubble all of his own. He did really well with stopping just before a safety car came out. It gave him a nice little undercut. Here we go. That's a good run from Jeff Thomas at Blake Delaney for the podium. Delaney defends the inside. Jeff Thomas shows his nose around the outside just to try to keep Blake Delaney on a less than optimal line, but not in a way that could get Jeff Thomas through and into 3rd. Here comes Chris Miller, a yo-yo through the field. Remember when he was as far back as 15th place? And remember when he was as high up as the podium spots? And now he's back into 6th with great pace last lap. Robbie Griffiths is in the lane with a show of smoke and a meatball flag to go with it.
He's been there for 40 minutes, pardon me, so just hasn't been able to get the car fixed since his incident. Actually, when did he have it? Yeah, when did he have it? 40 minutes ago he had a big incident. Unfortunately, I missed what that was. All right, bonk on the head for that one. And amongst all of us, David, it's time to start thinking about, well, who do we give the Chubby Buns Burgers Driver of the Day award to for this round? Do we give it to the drivers who have gone absolutely mad on the positions gained roster, which in this case I'd probably be saying Delaney's in with a shout here in 3rd? Or is there someone else that's caught your eye tonight?
Right, well, yeah, it does depend which methodology you want to apply. We can't give it to someone who made a really clever strategy call because we've not really had any of that. If you did, the only person you could give it to was maybe Michael Stewart. So, yeah, it'd be someone with good race pace who made some moves. Again, I don't like rewarding people who, botch qualifying. So that's how Checo Perez has like the most positions gained in F1 racing. It's like, well, if he qualified, he'd qualify second. He wouldn't have anyone to pass. He's in the fastest car. So Yeah, different methodology. It'd have to be between Stewart or Delaney or Kirby or Whiting or Latham. I don't know, man.
We could outsource it to the YouTube chat at the very least. We've got a couple people watching along, and appreciate everyone
Just
for
like F1 driver of the day. It's a popularity contest.
Well, then again, who knows? David Coleman, chief race steward, also occasionally likes to give some thoughts. So apparently he sometimes has the time to watch a bit of the stream whilst it's going on.
We always need a third voice to be the tiebreaker here, because unless you and I agree, there's no way to work it out.
And this is why we usually have a commentary team of 3. It's what you'd say if that was perfectly scripted, which it's not really. It's just a happenstance that we usually have a producer and 2 commentators. And tonight, I've had to actually unmute myself for a change. Is that Latham up the inside of Michael Whiting? It is. Poo on. And through.
Right, well, I can take Whiting out of consideration now that Latham's passed in. I've narrowed my options down to 7. That's John Latham. Had that costly slowdown, remember, as well in this race, and now back in the 8th.
Travis Hunt is just towed to the pits, and I can hear a very quiet mumble on the radio there. Now, as I said, botched qualifying and had no time set, but if John Latham can make it plus 30 positions, if he can catch David Kirby and Chris Miller, which will take a bit of effort with coming up to 2 laps to go in this race, that might be enough to swing, for me to swing a vote his way. But yeah, I'd probably be looking at giving it to someone like Stewart or Delaney tonight, or maybe actually in saying that, I would also say consider Chris Miller, David, for being able to recover from being a bystander in an incident, if I remember correctly.
I've mulled it over, and I've settled on Delaney for the moment.
I can work with that too.
But this is all provisional, 2 laps to go. There could be a lot of drivers right up against their incident limit, right up against the limit of their tyres. They've sort of into 16 laps now with still 2 to go. So a few of them are starting to wear out. The pace is holding up a little better now than it did at the end of the second stint, where a few of them started to really get into trouble. And hey, how about the fuel holding up as well? Some of them might need to enter a little bit of conservation with 2 to go. Here's pass. Pointing ahead of Crosby. Maybe a little bit of saving necessary for Crosby, but we have seen they've got long enough, tall enough gears up the Kemmel Straight, which is a long run, that the slipstream does start to kick in pretty powerfully towards the end of those straights.
It's got a bit of a battle here in 14th place on back. And go to 18th place with Dean Favell. He's got drivers back to Stephen Kennedy in 24th, sort of in touching distance of each other there. We've got nose to tail between Dan Hall and Paul Burns. We have been quite some time since the restart, and they are still going strong and close together. If anything, it's up front where they're not close. Michael Stewart keeping Scott Gamble somewhat honest, but coming to the start of the final lap here, and the gap is threatening 6 seconds from first to second.
I think Gamble was sort of looking backwards, just running the pace of second place so he didn't get out too far ahead, use up too much of his tyres, but now he really can put the hammer down if he feels like it. Beginning the final lap, it's Scott Gamble from Michael Stewart, from Blake Delaney, and that's not settled at all. Jeff Thomas is right with him, Nichols right with him. We highlighted Delaney as one of the drivers with the shorter stop under the safety car last time around, so maybe he's got a little bit of fuel to worry about, and they've all got to make their way through Eau Rouge Radion one more time, the namesake of this event in V8 Vets. This time around for the 300, and it has proved a big challenge to lots of drivers. and the track limits have proved super difficult. Delaney's looking to break the toe somewhat. Look at Jeff Thomas close in, but he's going to run out of straight. They're just approaching the braking zone now. Delaney on the inside. Thomas has a big look around the outside, trying to put third place off their line. First and second, you'd start chiseling them into the trophy, but third place, no, hold off on printing that one.
Tim Nicol trying to valiantly hold on to a top 5 finish here once again, but Chris Miller is going to try and get himself into the top 5 once again as well. And in behind that, you've then got David Kirby second back, John Latham 1.3 back. He's got Michael Wayne to worry about. And there's positions exchanging between Crosby and Poynton. So the 66 M1 racing machine back in front, but for how long? As he's got to cover off the inside on the approach to Pouon, and he'll make it tight enough. He stays in front around the outside.
Yeah, it's close, but it's the final lap and it's beginning to wind up. How much of it will come down to the braking zone at the bus stop chicane, the last braking zone of the lap? Scott Gamble's not far away from it. Michael Stewart's not far away from it. And look at that, Nicol super sideways. Chris Miller gets to the inside of him. David Kirby is watching on as well. Nicol runs out wide. Doble has a black flag. Craig Friend has a black flag for the incident limit. Scott Gamble does not. He's come from the front of the race, back to 5th place, and now back to the lead, and he's going to win. Around the outside, Chris Miller picks off Tim Nicol. Blake Delaney still ahead of Jeff Thomas. They're all coming to the checkered flag now. Gamble from Stewart. Delaney just ahead of Jeff Thomas. And Miller, Nicol, and Kirby.
And the lights are flashing aplenty because that was a good race at the front of the field there. And unfortunately didn't even get a chance to see the man come across the line first tonight here, Scott Gamble. That's how close everything was here. And the fishy cars get straight into the burnouts at the source, it seems. Further on back.
That. Incident points for some of those drivers like Doble and Friend. It's a super painful time for it because they cannot serve the drive-through on the final lap. They have to carry the black flag across the finish line, and then near enough to 40 seconds gets added post-race, whereas a drive-through in-race probably only costs you about 20 seconds or so. So the last lap is the worst time to overstep those incident limits. And for Doble, it'll be quite painful. Didn't affect anyone inside of the top 10, though.
No, it did not. So that will check that box off there. Just waiting on the last couple of cars to come through here. In fact, one car left to come through now in the form of Shane Randell. And then that will be it for the race. Now, interesting, Brad Doble's trying to argue something about getting a black flag for incident points at the end of that one there.
It might have actually been for not serving a slowdown, and he says there were so many cars behind me and I couldn't clear it in time without parking on the racing line or something like that. Sounds like some of what was going on. And there's a few drivers who want race control to look at some things after the checkered flag. It was 300 kilometres of action from Circuit Spa-Francorchamps for V8 Vets. 2 safety cars, keeping everyone's pit strategies in line. No tyre offsets, no fuel strategy offsets. Just hard, really hard racing. Scott Gamble comes out with the win from Michael Stewart and Blake Delaney, but it was so close through this part of the field. Jeff Thomas from Chris Miller, Tim Nicol and David Kirby, even John Latham and Michael Whiting getting pretty close to that right at the end, with Greg Sharp in the 10th place at the checkered flag. Christian Smart snuck up to 11th ahead of Mark Poynton, Darren Crosby, Stephen Varga, Jamie McKnight, Stewie Hall, Robert Crisdale, Dean Flavel. Might need to look at that Dino's Dino again. He has not reached mudcake status, but maybe he could have a burger or something. Darren Goosey and Scotty Van Loon are the top 20 there. Still on the lead lap was Ken Latta, Stephen Kennedy, David Nash, Paul Burns, Dan Hall, Chad Lewis, Gary Buckland, Halil Cesar, Jason Fewens, and Mario Reale. And then Brad Doble ends up back here in first, just ahead of Craig Friend, both of them with time added. Post-race, I believe, is factored in on that. And then Shane Randell was the last car on the lead lap, 1 lap down Chris Blanchard, 3 laps back Travis Hunt, 18 laps back Damien Cairns, and 19 laps back Robbie Griffiths. We didn't see Scott McCune, unfortunately, as he couldn't get into the race. 36 cars started, 37 ran.
Yeah, and the big trouble for Scotty McCune, unfortunately, he was set to start 17th place. So that's where the discrepancy for everyone who started, for those drivers who started the race, he was solidly mid-pack, and unfortunately, didn't even get to start tonight. So that concludes the race results as they are across the line. Time to go chat to our drivers on the podium. So I don't know, do we want to start with Scott Gamble and go down? Do we want to grab Blake Delaney and work our way up? David Haynes has picked for me, and the answer is we're going to work our way up from the man in third place here tonight as we bring in Mr. Delaney and Blake. Good to have you on the podium once again. How was it like out there with the safety cars really sort of putting you all on sort of the same strategy tonight?
Yeah, how good was that? Made a little bit of a save race, which I like. I'll take that.
Yeah, obviously our longest race of the season, big track, plenty of saving opportunities. So what was it like in terms of executing a save strategy around here once you had that early first stop in the books?
Not looking forward to the tyre wear. Dan, the tyre wear was pretty horrendous as the tyres went on. I think about lap 15 it started to go right off, but unfortunately in that last stint I made a few mistakes and had to aggressively pass people to try and get to the front, but unfortunately it just wasn't good enough.
Well, actually, if we can rewind even a little bit further, unfortunately, what happened in qualifying, obviously starting back in 21st tonight, putting you in the second half of the field. Any in particular moments in qualifying that we didn't see that sort of made that a bit rough for you there?
I have no excuses, but I didn't do any practice. I have had a difficult week away, so unfortunately, no, I didn't get any practice in. Did my first laps with about 10 minutes to go before the session started. Buggered up qualifying, was on a good run on the first lap, just mucked up with an off track, and then just got a lap in. I think I was 25th or something like that starting from, so yeah.
Well, that explains a fair bit there indeed in that case. Well, from the longest race of the season to the shortest, I believe it's the only 150k race on the schedule coming up next Thursday night, and off to Road Atlanta. So not as many straights, but there is still a pretty nice back straight to work with there. What do you think that's going to be like for the field once we rock up to that one next Thursday night?
Yeah, I think that's good. I like that track. Not necessarily awesome at it, but I like the track. I think there's a good couple of passing opportunities there. Good drafting opportunity down the back straight, similar to what we did here at Spa. So you should see some pretty good action on the broadcast. I just hope not to get that many incident points again.
Yeah, a couple of drivers got awfully close tonight, and unfortunately a few went past the incident point limit, but thankfully you weren't one of them in that case. Floor's all yours then, Blake. Who do you want to thank for helping you get it done in the 008 tonight?
Yeah, obviously all the boys. We have an awesome chat during the race. There was a fair bit going on in the Discord tonight, which was quite hilarious. Jump on to Harlan Esports and have a listen to the guys. There was some quite funny comments. Hopefully Dave Kirby had his stream unmuted. But West End Mazda, Infinity Designs, DC Shades, Battery Warehouse, Early Beach, Precision Sim Training, and to all the boys that are running tomorrow night, good luck.
Thank you very much there, Blake. And I think, David, I don't really have anyone else in mind, so I think we might also throw it in real quick.
Yeah,
and
let's call it.
To you as well. Also quickly give a nomination here. Making up 18 spots, Blake. That will be Chubby Buns Burgers Driver of the Day to you as well for this one tonight.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it. I'm very lucky to be here, to be honest. I was on 16 incident points for about 13 laps at the end there, so yep.
Yeah, I can see that now the race is over. Dave, any final words from us to Blake from you?
Yeah, congratulations on the good racing. And again, my thoughts in the last stint of the race there, seeing how early some people did go over those 17 incident points, is that there's got to be a few others really treading closely to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, everyone tonight, I mean, I don't know whether you saw it, but I got past Jeff Thomas and then past Timmy Nicol, and then the next time up Rouge, I did everything to stop before going off track again and let them both pass. So that was...
Oh, I think unfortunately I've just dropped on Blake, and David is explaining the situation there. So what I might do actually is I'll disconnect and reconnect to the channel here. See if we can grab the end of that conversation back there. Apologies, guys. Dramas on my end there. So we just lost you in the middle of explaining there. Your moment at Radion,
The incident points got a little out of shape going up Eau Rouge, and that's one of the times from third place we saw you drop back to fifth.
Oh, absolutely. And look, that would have been one of the times when it would have looked absolutely awesome on the broadcast. Timmy Nicol came up, flying up behind me. It didn't look like he was going to change lanes, and I was mirror driving and quickly shifted to the left. It probably would have been a big accident had I not moved. But, I mean, he's racing for a position, so completely fair game. But I think there would have been some awesome viewing points on the broadcast tonight, considering some of the action that was happening. I saw it out of my windscreen, so I'm assuming you guys had a bit of fun.
It was non-stop with the lack of field spread from the two safety cars as well. So we caught plenty of what was going on with those podium positions. But 37 drivers racing, there was a lot going on.
Yeah, not everyone loves a safety car, but I think it just spices up the action. It's always good fun. Let's get rid of some CPSs and put some more safety cars in there. I reckon that's a hell of a lot more fun.
Well, there we are. Thank you for joining us, Blake Delaney. Well done here tonight, and look forward to seeing how you go next week.
Dan, Dave, have a good night, boys. Cheers.
Well, there we are, David. P3 and driver of the day to Blake Delaney. There to wrap up the first interview of the night. I hand to you to chat to the man who came home in second place, Michael Stewart, for the 919 machine.
Yes, indeed. And from the very little strategy variation we had out of this race with two safety cars, the one driver who did manage a little bit of tyre offset was Michael Stewart.
Yoo-hoo! How was that, boys? Hey, second podium in 180 races, so I'm pretty bloody happy.
Yeah, sort of from a bit of luck, you ended up basically having a one-lap undercut on a lot of the top 10, and then sort of not really needing to pay any price for it when the safety car came out.
Yeah, if you had a look, boys, the three in front of me were squabbling pretty hard, and I had a few attempts to overtake, and it was just getting really dicey. And yeah, I just thought, go the undercut and get out of this mess and try and get a bit of clean air, because I honestly thought I had a bit of pace over them, particularly on worn tyres. So I thought, well, I'll put in some quali laps to begin with and go hard, and I should be able to, jump those few and try and get closer to the podium. And fortunately, the safety car came out, and yeah, man, it's Thursday. Balin's looking down on us, and yeah, gave me the luck I needed, I guess.
And then that middle stint of the race was pretty interesting, because everyone running longer on those tyres than they probably would have without a lap 4 safety car. You really sort of, the lap pace did drop off pretty significantly. A lot of guys getting sideways there.
Yeah, well, see, I wasn't getting sideways, but I was using that stint. Who did I have in front of me? Was it Jeff Thomas or somebody? But somebody that was reasonably quick that was in front of me. So I was doing massive fuel saves and just giving long lifts and coasting right deep into the corners to catch back up. And yeah, I just thought that would be the go. Trying to go 20 plus laps on a set of tyres around this place is not worth it. And I don't know, at one stage, Scott Gamble got behind me, and then he was pressing me, and I just thought, you know what, I'll sit behind him because I don't have his pace, so no point defending. It's funny how some people mid-race will defend to the death, and it just burns tyres and fuel and patience. So I thought I'd try a different strategy.
We had a good look at the zoom wall. You're one of the few drivers we see on the zoom wall racing in VR. How does that work for you across 300 kilometers? Obviously, it works out for second place, but
Yep.
For some of the longer races, some people seem to not prefer it.
Yeah, like, the thing is I went from a single 55-inch TV to a G2 VR, which was quite, for a better word, quite blurry. And now I've got an Varjo Aero, and it's crystal clear. They've got a built-in fan inside, so when the headset gets a bit warm, it starts blowing air through. Plus, I've also got 2 fans in the front and a fan down my back. So I don't get the sweats or blurry eyes or anything like that, because it is so clear. Highly recommend them.
You go, it's worked out great for you. The strategy's worked out perfect. You're pretty pleased with your second place, so I'm sure there's some people you'd like to thank.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, just a couple of announcements. After 35 years in the car industry, I've decided to make the foundation my full-time work. So obviously the Balaam Stewart Foundation, but more importantly, my wife. She enables me to have my little passion, my little hobby, and my little escape. So yeah, I've got to give a shout out to Carolyn, my wife, all the people that support us, Kook Media, who's Corbo's company, and then sort of Scott McCune with RC Constructions, all the sponsors on our cars. 2 thumbs up. It's great. I'm going to go and have a little tequila or something now. I'm pretty happy and need a celebration.
Yeah, get a drink and an ice bath. Great race, great undercut strategy, and you land yourself on the podium.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And shout out to you guys. You guys do a fantastic job, and I love watching the replay, so thank you.
Second place, Michael Stewart joining us, and means there's one guy left to speak to. And we speak to him plenty.
Oh,
Scott Gamble is going to join us from the winner's step once again. A couple times it looked a little touch and go for you, though. There's some slowdown penalties, some other stuff. No one had a perfect run tonight.
Yeah, how you going, Hainsey and Dan? Yeah, it was tough, guys. It was just a tough track, long track, like 300 kilometres around there. It's a big night, a late night, and it had a slowdown, which I didn't really mind that slowdown, to be quite honest, Hainsey, because it put me back into P4. I thought, all right, I'll just save some fuel, and I think the guys started messing around a little bit up the front, and I was like, all right, I've had enough of this. So we tried to get on with it, and there's a little bit of contact there when we've, unfortunately for Chris and Ben, but yeah, I just thought he sort of moved over, left, under brakes there, so he defended to the right and then come over the left. So there was a little bit going on, and yeah, it was what it was, mate, but we'll see what happens. We got there in the end.
Strategy decided for you in the form of race control and the safety cars in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. You just had to follow the safety car for the strategy. Otherwise, it probably would have been, if we'd been able to run the full length, it would have been, 80 litres and then possibly 70 or 75 after that, Hainsey, for the second stop.
And with the lack of any tyre offset, we saw so many battles where no one wants to move over for anyone or make any passes easy because everyone's locked into the same strategy. No tyre deltas there. It felt like 3 sprint races rolled into one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know a few of the lads, they had some good battles going on, and Tim Nicol, he was fast. Unfortunately, got sort of caught at the end, so he drove a really good race, which was really good to see. But it'll be interesting to watch it back. But you're right, you just had to lock into that strategy, try and manage your tyres a little bit. And fuel load, if you cut it short, there was probably some undercuts going on there as well. So I think in the end, it might have been some off-tracks were limiting some people as well there, Hainsey. I know I was close on 15.
Well, we heard 16 from third place. So I think everyone was towing that line, especially in a long race. The track limits, as they were. Getting crunch time for the championship as well. If you put that hat on, today's a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. We turn up race. It's a busy week, as you know. Like tomorrow night, we've got the Pro Series Enduro, which is a team event. And then, tonight with the team event. So it's really, really been a busy week getting sort of prepped for both races. But, you get some points in the bag, and away you go, and on to next week. I think it's Road Atlanta, so we'll see what happens there.
Well, when you count drop rounds, it's not going to drop around like tonight. A big win for you. Had to make a couple passes there. Who are you going to thank?
Yeah, look, like to thank the sponsors over at 95 Sim Sports in RaceKraft. They also sponsor the league. They're awesome sim rigs, so you got to check them out. Turn In Apparel, RSW Graphics. Ross does an awesome job on paints, not only on our cars, but he does quite a few other cars and iRacing cars throughout the teams. Racing Ears and Prestige Cinematography. Also, shout out to you guys there in the booth. Big night for yous. Big night tomorrow night as well. So yous are putting in the hard yards, and appreciate the effort that you're putting in. To the drivers, well done. Well done to Michael Stewie. Really good to see him up in a P2. Absolutely awesome. Well done to Blake. Tomo was super consistent, and also, Chris got back up in a P5. So well done to him. Yeah, and that's it. Thanks to the admin and the sponsors of the team. So, hope you have a good night, and yeah.
Thanks for making the time for us and making the time for 300 and some kilometres of Spa tonight.
Yeah, it was a big one. All right, catch you later, guys.
Scott Gamble from the top step of the podium did not lead every lap of that one, but he came home at the right time in strong fashion. Almost 2 hours of racing there. Next time out, though, they're not going to have to sweat in their chairs quite as long for V8 Vets.
Indeed, no. Half the race distance to 150 clicks. And, well, it's going to be a faster lap, though, so maybe whether it goes by faster or not in a relative sense, we'll have to wait and see. But, yeah, penultimate round of this 20th season of the RaceKraft V8 Veterans Championship, and we'll be live as we have been every Thursday night this season at 8:30 p.m. once again. Unfortunately, won't be expecting your company here in the commentary box, David, with our regular pairing of Scott Rankin and Thomas Hinz back potentially. Although saying that, maybe not, because there is also the fact that we are busy. It's a busy week next week for us too, but that's beyond the scope of it. It's the Motorsport Australia, FIA Motorsport Australia Esports, FIA Motorsport Games live qualifier next Friday night, and so SimSpeed are taking part in helping that event run.
Fortress in Melbourne.
At Fortress in Melbourne, indeed, yes. So that's on the cards. So actually, I might not have Scott next week. So maybe there's an opening still for next Thursday night.
See.
We'll see.
And you'll see it here on SimSpeed TV next Thursday night for the next installment of RaceKraft V8 Vets Championship. I've been David Haynes with Daniel Yeaman. 300 brutal kilometres of Spa-Francorchamps with 2 safety cars and wheel-to-wheel battling the whole way through. Off tracks, black flags, meatballs, and slowdown penalties galore. But through it all, Scott Gamble, Michael Stewart, and Blake Delaney take the 3 steps on the podium. Our thanks again, of course, go to the supporters of V8 Vets who make the championship and the broadcast possible. Title sponsor, RaceKraft Simulations, and all the rest that you see on screen. We'll all be back 1 week's time for the next round of V8 Vets here on SimSpeed.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.